quorum being present, the meeting will come to order.
Nice job.
First business in order is the approval of the minutes dated November 5th and November 13th, 2018. Are there any corrections to the minutes? There being no corrections, the minutes are approved. Take consensus. Seek consensus to approve those.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
I was here for one, but not for the other, so,
You can abstain.
yeah, okay. If you're gonna do them both
Let's
together?
do November 5th first.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah, did it right. So
Let's start again, starting with November 5th.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
I'm not sure if I was here at that meeting and I couldn't print any of those out.
Oh, hold on, I got it. I got it.
I
You
can't
came
print
late.
anything.
You were.
You were here.
You were here.
you're listed.
You
Yeah, you're here.
Yes.
Came a little bit later.
November 5th are approved. Was I here on November 13th?
Yes, you were
Yes,
there
you
too.
were.
Thank you. Let's do November 13th, starting with Ms. Raccio.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Abstain.
Yes.
Yes.
With one abstention, those minutes are approved. Moving forward, discussion and possible consensus regarding graduation requirements.
Could we actually go to B
Sure,
first?
you want to do B, the proposed approval of Sheehan High School trip to Quebec City, Canada, from March 14th, 2019 to March 17th, 2019.
Yes. Would you like to come up and share?
Sure.
Okay, so this is a trip for the students, 30 students I'm looking to take for a cultural experience so that they can practice with the language, they can learn about French-Canadian culture. And usually when I've done this trip in the past, they come back and they're enthusiastic and they're just so much more, excited about learning French, and it's really turns out to be a great experience.
And this is Mrs. Susan Hudson, a
Yes.
French teacher at Sheehan High School.
We,
So this would be a combination trip with Sheehan and Lyman Hall.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how many years have you done this?
Here in Wallingford, I think this would be my third time going.
Okay.
But I've done
that's
the
what I
trip
thought.
many times in
Yes.
previous district, yeah.
So starting with Ms. Raccio, we'll take consensus to approve.
Do you want to see if there's questions?
Any discussion?
Questions?
You're only taking 30 or
I mean, I'll take more if they want to come, but usually around 30 is the number that I usually like to stay with.
when are you going?
30 to 40, so March,
Yeah.
yes.
Have you already put it out? I mean, have you gotten?
No, I'm waiting until this
Yeah.
is, it was
Okay.
approved to put it out, yeah.
I thought maybe you got a feel for how many would want to go. Okay.
I'm assuming it's a typo, but Iceland is in my packet.
Yes, yeah.
yeah,
No, that's a second trip.
Yeah.
We pulled
There's
that
two
out.
trips.
But it's in the Quebec packet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we
Sorry.
pulled that right
Yeah.
out.
Okay.
Pulled that right out of there.
Sure you're not making a side trip?
Yeah, okay, there we go.
Any other questions? Starting with Ms. Raccio.
Yes.
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 yes,
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Item B is approved. Item C, proposed approval of Lyman Hall High School trip to Iceland from August 6th to August 12th, 2019.
And this is Nicole Decker.
This is me. So this was proposed by a student, had come to my attention that they were interested in taking this trip and exploring Iceland. And I went and did some more research into the Education First facility. And we have come up with this itinerary that you might be able to witness. It's a 7-day trip where the focus is primarily on agriculture and STEM with a little bit of culture and history. And then we're working towards planning a service project as well. The goal is to hopefully have 30 students that are ag primarily, but if we do not receive that 30 through ag, opening up to Sheehan and Lyman Hall students as well.
What kind of ag things are you looking to do in Iceland?
It's a great question. There's everything from seeing a geothermal greenhouse, seeing Icelandic ponies, walking on glaciers and seeing a variety of geysers and waterfalls, walking on black sanded beaches, going to see and learning a little bit more about the plate tectonics on the island as well. Showing a wide variety because ag is a wide variety of skills, and as you know, our department has 8 different areas as well, so we're kind of trying to touch upon a lot of them. And So that's, and then seeing some things like the folk, I think there's a folk museum, learning a little bit about the actual capital of Iceland, seeing where the president resides and things like that. So you're learning about the culture there, learning about the agriculture there, and then being able to compare, contrast both. Mhm.
Thank you.
Ms. Raccio?
On page 2, it speaks about potentially graduating seniors from the class of 2018 may be eligible to go. Is that common that we have students who've graduated from Wallingford Public Systems go on the field trip with existing students?
We haven't in the past. We had one occurrence where I believe the student went as a chaperone, and that was a few years back with Argentina, but that hasn't been a tradition.
So would all of the Wallingford policies and everything apply to this non-student?
That's something that I know is a discussion point that I know we even had at central office, so we wanted to make, if you didn't bring it up, we were gonna bring that up, because that is one area that we do have to discuss, and we wanted, rather than us just cutting that off, we wanted to have a discussion
We
here.
wanted to see if we did our homework.
Well, no, not necessarily, but we wanted to make sure that we had a discussion about it, because it is a thoughtful, and we wanted to make sure that obviously we had staff here to talk more about what that would look like. There is a challenge there, because once students walk across the stage, they no longer are the students of our school district. So the challenge that we have is twofold. We have a policy challenge, because they no longer fall under our disciplinary control, as well as, the liability is also a piece, because they're outside of the Board of Education's, control and purview at that point. So, again, we just didn't want to squelch it. We wanted to be able to, in the spirit of having a conversation, at least offer that this evening. But I think those are two large hills, and that's why we haven't done it in the past. The only time we did do it, it was based on the fact that there was a chaperone requirement. And I don't, to be honest, I would have to check with Kim Moore, because I don't think we even went through with that one, because there was reluctance. The parents were going also, so it was a little bit different. But I don't think we even followed through on that one.
On a side note to that, some of the seniors that I was personally thinking about as adding for this situation was a lot of the students potentially try to stay on our FFA membership to attain what's called an American degree, to go through the FFA ranking of degrees, aka awards for what they do and what they're proactive with. They get a green hand, a chapter, a state, and then they have the ability to get an American degree after they have actually graduated. Most will get them between their freshman and sophomore years of college. So to actually obtain that, they have to stay on our roster. So they pay their $20 or whatnot to stay on the roster, to say that they've done their various hours and whatnot. I don't see a lot of seniors going through this, because, like you said, it's after they graduate, but I just wanted to throw out there that some students may still be trying to obtain that higher degree and may still be trying to have that connection here at Wallingford. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Ms. Purcell?
So would they be required to have their own insurance and things, since don't really follow under our policy?
Well, when students travel anyway, we do offer the access to travel insurance, and obviously their insurance, what we're talking about, their medical insurance comes from their family.
Right.
This is more of the liability, because as a school district, there are other liabilities that we have to look at for safety. So that would be something that I think, and especially where you're going, there are some opportunities that could become a little bit less safe than others. Obviously, it's challenge by choice, and of course, it's going to be under the optimal safety requirements as possible, but you're also talking about glaciers, you're talking about some spaces that could be less than traditionally considered safe. So it's more about that other liability, that more umbrella liability, rather than the actual personal liability would come under the control of the parents with their own personal health care, be it Blue Cross Blue Shield, whatever it may be. But it's more of the personal liability piece.
First, I think we need to open that door.
Yeah,
Is that
that's,
correct?
I was trying to get the eye of, so.
Let me open that door. You got it. Thank you. My other question was, when we
Thank you so much.
bring additional chaperones, are parents allowed to chaperone?
they're able to attend. As of right now, we're trying to stay with the 1-to-6 ratio, which is by the town and also by Education First. I've talked with my ag department, and I have found that many of them are interested in attending. They're male and female. And my department head, Rebecca Rose, who went on the Argentina trip, is interested in going as well. So I have individuals who have done this before, and both male and female that are interested as well. I have talked to Education First. If they would like to pay their way, they can. It is going to be a little bit higher because they do receive a bit of a discount based upon the age of the students versus adult. But, yeah, and I can look into that prices if they are interested.
Thank you. Ms. Costello?
Parents.
Parents, yeah.
I would just ask, have we reached out to our council in respect to the insurance issue?
I know we've done it in the past, and there was concern. I mean, again, that was, I want to say that's going on 5 years ago. I'd be more than happy to do that again. Just going back, if I may, to the parent piece, if parents are going as chaperones or anything, they have to follow the full chaperoning policy, which would be the background check, all that information, because it is an overnight. So I just wanted to clarify that. Even if they're going as a guest, not chaperone, we still would have them required to have the background check. Any adult that's a non-certified staff, it's a non-staff member, we require that. And that's been changed in policy for years now.
I would suspect we would need the same from any non-student as well.
Correct.
And I would be concerned if any of them are not 18 at that point, if there's still 17-year-old non-students that were going. Mr. Votto?
Your question, were you referring to those students who have graduated if their parents went with them?
No.
No, you weren't.
No,
Okay.
I was referring to, I was just trying to get a feel if we allow parents to chaperone, do we allow relatives?
I have an issue with parent chaperoning. I would
Like,
think you would too.
likewise?
We tend, there's few trips that does happen.
And I would not be for having anybody who has graduated from our school system should not be going on this trip. I don't think you'd want that responsibility.
Ms. Levesque?
I agree with that. What do we know about this Education First travel agency? Can you give me a little information? Have you personally chaperoned before, or?
I've chaperoned not with them. I've created trips within the U.S. where I took students to FFA Nationals in Indianapolis, Indiana, for FFA competitions and whatnot at that national level, but I have not worked with Education First. I have spoken with other teachers at Lyman Hall that have worked with them, so the Spanish trip has gone with them. Other schools have, or other trips have been planned through them. It is a facility that creates itineraries for not only whatever you're interested in, but also depending on the regions that you're going to, if it's a historical, if it's a STEM-based, if it's that kind of thing. So the one that I'm working with is a woman up in Glastonbury, and she's able, and we're speaking quite often about itineraries and listings and dates and deadlines and things like that to find out, to get to this proposal.
So if it's the board's decision that we not allow graduating seniors to participate, what age group would you think you would want to bring on this trip?
I teach 9 through 12, so anywhere in the range is fine. So it's to me is open from freshmen through seniors. But as we see, as the proposal is this August, based upon timeframes for both students and then also Education First. They just recently mentioned that they might need a certain number of students by a certain date, which might be too close to proximity. That's why in the proposal I also mentioned potentially in April of 2020.
Thank you.
So if I could just ask a follow-up
Sure.
to that, or just make a comment. The thing is that most likely it would be sophomores, juniors
Yes.
would be the ones, because freshmen would be just entering the school if you did it in August. And it would, most often our trips are sophomores and juniors.
Mhm.
Just for
Well, if that's the case, should we bother even offering it to ninth graders then? Maybe we should.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think you would offer it to ninth graders. I think you'd offer it to rising 10th
Rising.
graders. That's where I should,
10, 11,
rising
12.
10th and rising.
So
11.
current freshmen, is
12?
that what?
And rising 12 too.
Rising 12.
Rising 10, 11, 12.
Yep.
Yeah.
So why don't we get an idea of how the board feels about allowing graduated students on the trip? I know I would be opposed to it.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Yeah, I'm not comfortable with
Yeah,
that.
I'm not comfortable with it either.
Neither am I.
As I indicated, I don't care for that idea.
Okay, so it sounds like the board is opposed to allowing graduated students on this trip.
Mhm.
Are we at the point where we're ready to approve the trip?
Can
Everybody
I
okay
ask
with that?
one more question?
With that
another question?
modification.
Will any students have the ability to request high school credit for this? I know it's in the.
Based upon my readings and my research, I do not believe Connecticut accepts the Education First high school credit.
Okay, that was my only question.
Thank you. Any other questions?
But they are offered if they would like to do the college credit with an added expense.
So what I think you're suggesting, Ms. Corso, is to vote and take consensus on this document with the adjustment.
With our adjustments. Yes.
Wait,
You not ready?
this is for August, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Potentially August, or it could be as late as next year in 2020. It depends on the timeline of organizing the trip.
I've read this a few days ago. What number are you trying to,
My goal is 30, my minimum is 15.
50?
Mhm.
Okay, and when are the kids gonna get, if we decide tonight, okay with this,
As
you,
soon as possible, I will have a conversation with my Education First individual. They have an actual proposal already created. I will book our agricultural community room, and I will set a meeting for parents and students who are interested and get the word out, I'm guessing, before the holidays.
Ms. Raccio?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Yes, with those corrections.
Thank you all very
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, would we like to go to strategic plan or graduation requirements?
I would like to go to graduation requirements.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to you, Ms. Latour.
All right, the first thing I want to do is pass out a few items. One of the board members requested a hard copy of the email I sent to you yesterday, so I made a hard copy for everyone. Thank you. Thank you. So just to kind of set the stage for tonight's conversation, it is very important that the board try to come to consensus, not try, you need to, come to consensus on what is going to comprise the buckets for humanities and STEM as it relates to the revised requirements. This has yet to be written into any sort of policy, but for us to kind of proceed with the program of studies, we need to have an idea of where you all stand with humanities and STEM, et cetera. We also have on this document the proposed increase to the minimum course load requirement from 6.5 to 7. In the packet that was handed out to you is a lot of information. So I tried to clip it together by question. The first part of the packet are all of the questions by board members with the corresponding answers, and then where I included links, I printed out a hard copy for you. So you will see in that packet AP information, graduation requirements from the League of Innovative School Members. You will see information about our courses by content, the last date of revision, documentation as to all of our active courses for the last 5 years and how often they have run. You have information in front of you about which high school they ran in for the last 3 to 4 years. And you also have within the question documents information about enrollment for capstone, information about AP enrollment, how many of those students took the AP test, how many of the students who took the test passed the test, in addition to the revisions to the study hall information that you requested by student, by period, so that you can see how it displays across the day by school, first semester and second semester. So it's a lot of information to digest. but hopefully it will help guide you in any further questions you may have about our conversation this evening.
If we come to a conclusion tonight, is this considered the first reading?
No, what we would need to do is put it in official policy form and put
So
that
it's not even
on.
that then?
No, you really need to come to consensus first before we can revise officially the
Okay,
policy.
I wanted-
And then from there is additional conversations that we are going to need to have based on some of the questions that were asked and how we need to proceed. For example, when we think about minimum course load requirement, what do we want to count as towards that requirement? So online learning, independent studies, college coursework, dual enrollment, internships. Currently, none of that is considered applicable to minimum course load. So that is a conversation for the board as well to have, in addition to what counts towards the state graduation requirements and what doesn't if a child takes a class outside of the district. You know, these are things that currently are in our regulation that we would need to, while we're updating the policy, also update the regulation.
Okay, that's a lot of stuff.
That's all
I know.
tonight?
No,
So can
Tonight-
I ask a quick question?
sure.
So we're proposing that students take 7 credits per year. All students are required to take 7 credits. But do they have to pass 28 credits to graduate, or are we still saying that, well, we would be saying 26, I think, is required to graduate?
Right now, the state requires, in their proposal, that 25 credits are the requirement, the minimum requirement for graduation, fulfilling all of their stipulations. Just because we, as a district, might say that you need to take 28 based on the course load requirement, that doesn't necessarily mean, unless you decide otherwise, that they need all of those 28 credits to graduate. So
we're
there's a
saying
little bit of
25.
leeway there.
They have to take 28,
They have to
but they
pass
have
the
to pass
25 prescribed by the
to
state.
graduate.
They have to pass only 25,
In
But I'm
order
not
to,
all 28?
Well, to meet the state requirement.
Correct.
But
But
it
we could,
won't
we
meet ours.
we could decide what we want.
You can decide what you
I
want.
wanted to clarify that.
Yes.
So we don't have to graduate.
Right, you
Correct.
could as a board, because, again, as long as you don't go below the state requirement, you could determine that because we require kids to take 28 credits,
They don't
that they would
pass.
have to pass every single one of those and have 28 credits to graduate. That's your choice as a Board of Education.
Okay.
Dr. Menzo?
so I think, again, the task at hand tonight is to look at those buckets and make sure that that's the number one task, because remember, we talked about how this has to directly impact the curriculum planning guide. So the policy could come in January, it could come in February, it could come in March. The key thing is we need to know what students are signing up for. Even the 6.5 versus 7 credit could come later, to be honest. It's really more about what's falling into those buckets. That is the most important thing that needs to be accomplished this evening.
And if I can just guide you a little bit to the point where, you know, based on where we're currently at versus what is being proposed by the policy committee, there are only a few changes. You know, the English requirement is the same, the social studies requirement is the same. What we're changing is we have to increase the health credit to align with the new proposal by the state. World language is now a requirement in terms of 1 credit. And what we're saying in our proposal is that every student would need to take a fine arts credit and a CTE credit, where currently it's either one of those as part of their credits to graduate. So those are kind of the differences when you think about, yes, they're in different buckets and we might be labeling them a little bit different, but our incoming freshmen, really the big differences are you would need a fine and practical arts credit and a CTE credit. You need that increase in health, and world language is now a requirement. And so is that mastery-based learning, mastery-based diploma assessment. So that is a difference there as well.
I think my question is probably for the math and science coordinators. What math is being tested on the SAT as our state test, and what courses students will need to take in order to be prepared for that? And same thing with the NGSS and our science courses. Where do our kids have to get in order to be prepared for that test in junior year? So I think that's an important piece that we need to kind of define at this point. English, English, we currently require 4 credits.
We require 4 very specific credits, which are outlined in the proposal, because there are also English electives that would not count towards that requirement.
Didn't we do the same with science?
Yes.
We added.
Yep. So both Christine Medancy and Kate O'Donnell are here. They have developed their progression. They have looked at exactly that, Erin. What courses with aligned standards are needed as a student goes from a freshman to a sophomore to a junior, and I'll let them speak specifically to that. We did, from the last meeting, make an adjustment to the science, where before we had 3 broad science credits. And after kind of listening to the conversation and speaking with Kate, it's recommended that 1 falls in a life science, 1 falls in a physical science, and 1 could be either a life, physical, or earth science. That way, those courses align back to the NGSS standards. It gives variety, and I'll let Kate speak specifically to that. Go ahead.
So when we created the course progression, and it's actually students are in the course progression now, it's not something we're starting for incoming freshmen. We have students at the G and A level start with earth science in their freshman year. So we have the new course that started this year. And then they take biology in their sophomore year, and then they take either physical science or chemistry or physics. So they're taking the earth and space, the life science, and the physical science. In order for students to be able to take 2 AP classes, some of our science students have that track where they want to take it. They have to skip over the earth science, and they have to start with honors biology as a freshman. Then they take chemistry as a sophomore, and then that gives them the option for junior and senior year which APs they want to take. They can take AP Physics, AP Bio, or AP Chem. But because AP Bio and AP Chem require you to take a full year of Bio and Chem first, those are the first 2 courses those students take. And it aligns to NGSS, and that's the reason I wanted to, each course is going to be defined. Is it a core life science course? Is it a core physical science course? Is it a core earth and space science course? And instead of 3 sciences, kids will be required to take one of those core courses. So they couldn't just fill up their schedule with electives, because the core courses are much more tightly aligned to the next gen science standards. And so we know that the kids are going to be more successful with the new science standards if they take those core courses.
So I'm a little confused. It sounds to me like a kid as a freshman has to know his path for NGSS. If in other words, if he's got to meet certain requirements in freshman and sophomore year in order to be able to take those advanced placement classes in junior, senior year, he's got to know that in his freshman year. Is that correct?
We do actually placements at the end of 8th grade. We have 5 placement criteria that we look at: their math scores, their science scores, their English and language arts scores, their aptitudes, abilities, and goals, and we look at those and make those placements for the incoming 9th graders at the end of the 8th grade year.
So they get some counseling to help them determine that that's the path they should be at least looking at, or you know what I mean? I'm just afraid that a kid all of a sudden in his sophomore year discovers, oh wow, I really like this path, but how do I get there now? Because I didn't do it in my, is it too late then? You know what I'm saying?
Like for that student who takes biology as a sophomore, they could then take honors biology because they would have the prerequisite course. They would probably not be able to take AP biology and AP chemistry. There just aren't enough years. But there are opportunities for students to double up on a science if they can fit it within their schedule as well, so they can sort of catch up if they didn't think they were going in that direction.
Okay, thanks.
You don't have a lot of AP.
Yeah, well, it's been just when I was leaving high schools when NGSS came down the pike, so. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, did you say earlier that if a student, let's say, is on an AP track, they're not going to be taking earth science?
They don't take earth science as a freshman year. It's still being offered as an elective currently in the upper grade levels, but they don't take it, they don't.
And this is where I'm fuzzy, isn't NGSS though, they brought back earth science?
They did, but we've looked at many surrounding districts who have maintained that track so kids could take the double APs. And, you know, we haven't given the assessment and gotten any scores back yet, so we kind of have to see what happens. And if we need to make a change based on that, then we will make a change, because the NGSS is really based and balanced on the 3 sciences.
Okay.
We purposefully didn't label one of the science classes either as biology, because we wanted to give ag science students the opportunity not to have to take a class that is redundant to some of their other ag science classes. So Kate worked with Rebecca Rose to look at the ag science courses, the standards they align to, making sure they point all in the same direction so that for Lyman Hall students, they would be able to have their ag science classes count towards a life science or a physical science or otherwise, which then frees up their scheduling somewhat to take some other things that they are also interested in.
Oh, sorry.
Did you have a
I said-
question?
I just want,
Just a quick question. So how many classes AP Science do we have? I mean, I'm looking at AP Chemistry, we have 13 students. Is that 2 classes, 1 at each school?
I think there's 13 at one school and 8 at the other. We run one section in each, if
Okay.
I'm not mistaken. The principals can correct me.
Oh, gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
you're right. I'm looking at just 1 school. Okay, thank you.
Hi, everyone. In the area of mathematics, if students come in, there's basically 2 options as freshmen. You're either on our advanced accelerated track, so you're coming in starting with geometry, moving on to algebra 2, pre-calculus, and then your senior year you have electives. If you come in taking algebra 1, you move on to geometry, and then algebra 2 or our financial algebra alternative to algebra 2. And all 3 of those, no matter which one you go with, you're on track to prepare for the SAT. So the SAT has 4 sections in the area of math. Heart of Algebra is 33% of the test. That aligns to our Algebra 1 course. Problem solving and data analysis is 29% of the course, of the SAT, I'm sorry. This is one area where we're trying to fit that data analysis and problem solving, the areas in that bucket. We're trying to fit that into our courses. But this is where I think I mentioned last time, that is where we found our gap in our progression at the high school. So that's something that math management is currently looking at and analyzing our progression at the high school. The 3rd section is Passport to Advanced Math. That's about 28% of the SAT. And this aligns with our Algebra 2 curriculum, or again, that advanced algebra. And then the last 10% is other topics. And that's where you find a couple geometry questions and or pre-calculus questions.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what we currently have.
That's what
That's the current requirements of Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2.
our only requirement in the area of math right now is that they take a course with algebraic topics.
Oh.
So that would be any of our math courses.
Because I'm looking at our matrix, and the recommendations is the Algebra 1
Correct.
only, and then everything else is up for grabs, with right now a 2 additional credit requirement. But
Right.
they could take Algebra 1 and then take statistics.
That's
or-
essentially doesn't necessarily differ from what we have now.
Okay.
Right.
But I think I
Because
heard you say that from an SAT perspective, the geometry in Algebra 2 or financial algebra is the better way to go.
Well, that's our progression. And so no matter what, students they really follow that progression. So
But
they
if I didn't want to take geometry, could I take Algebra 2?
technically, yes.
But it's not
Algebra
recommended.
1 is a prerequisite for Algebra 2. Geometry is not.
Okay. Thanks.
Yes. Mr. Votto? Oh, sorry. Were you first?
It's okay.
Here, first, you can go right ahead.
I just have a real easy question, I think, but the 2 credit additional math courses, do you like that that's open like that? Because you talked about wanting to do data analysis, but you're not ready for it just yet. Does that
Correct.
make it easier for you to have it listed that way?
So what we're kind of playing with math management is, instead of making, geometry is currently a full year course.
Right.
A lot of the current research, and you can see by the redesign of the SAT, geometry is downplayed. And successful rate at, college and college level math and science courses, geometry is really has not been found to be necessary for all of those, so it has been downplayed a little bit. So what we're currently looking at is a progression that will take geometry from a full year course to a half year course, and offset that with that problem solving and data analysis that we're missing.
So this
But
wording-
again, we're not ready for that for next year. That would be something that we would maybe propose to all of you in the spring, write the curriculum for those 2 courses next year to implement the following year.
All right, so the wording is good for you for now, because it gives you more
For,
flexibility.
for right this second, yes.
Well, that was my question.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
But,
Yes.
why do you can't get something done for next year? I'm just
I
worried
mean,
that, that's 29% of the
Could
SAT.
I? Yes. But it would, I would need,
Is there something that we can incorporate?
yes,
I don't know, I'm just
technically I
looking for
could.
a Band-Aid. on
We'd
something
have,
that
we'd have
really-
to fast track it, but I could.
That is 29%. That's a large percentage.
Technically, a lot of the units that we would need, we have written. It's just about, laying them out differently and emphasizing some things and really pulling a lot from our geometry. If it's something that, yes, it could be done, but
Why don't we do this, because I think that there probably is a good exercise, at least to map out what it would entail.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you could share that with Carrie, and then we could share that with the board.
Absolutely.
Either, doesn't necessarily have to be at a meeting, but just at least share it, so then we could determine next steps. I know that there's always concern when we're moving curriculum changes too quickly for the teachers,
Right.
and their capacity to be able to make those changes.
And I think that's really why we weren't ready, because we just started this discussion with the teachers at the high school in October.
But I'm sure they would also like to see their kids do well on this.
Oh, absolutely. And
Oh,
I'm not saying,
absolutely.
and I want to
That's
be,
not-
Kind of like a-
and I want to make
No.
it clear, I'm not
The-
saying that they're not capable of doing
No,
it
no.
whatsoever. The teachers
we've
are more
just
than
started
capable,
this
but
And I
discussion.
the
certainly don't wanna give
discussion
you
just
more work,
started.
Mr. Nancy.
I appreciate that.
It's just the discussion started just recently.
Correct.
So to make that shift without having the teachers have the appropriate time to embrace that, learn about it, it's not really fair to them as well. So I know that they want their children to succeed. It's not that they're incapable of teaching the courses. It's just that it is a large shift in a short amount of time.
Yes.
Excuse my ignorance, but is there something, it is a large block of time. What's the number of minutes per class? 80?
84 minutes.
Okay. Is there any way that some of this information, I'm not too sure exactly what the problem-solving data analysis entails, is there any way that the geometry class can be supplemented now with some things to kind of at least prepare them without writing a whole new curriculum by next year?
Yes, I do. And here's part of the problem is that geometry teachers go in, and having always taught geometry, when you try to fit an added unit in at the end of the year for data analysis and problem solving, that's the unit they don't get to, because they're so really it would take a major shift in that course, because we can't continue to teach geometry as we always have and try to fit more in. So we really have to analyze that course and see what the necessities are there and pull out the things that aren't.
It's all yours.
Thanks.
Yes.
I just want to say, nobody needs to know how fast a train going this way and another train going a different you know.
That is not in our curriculum.
Right, good. Nobody needs to know that. That's one of those things,
No, it's
nobody,
not.
pull that
No,
out,
it's not.
please.
Yes.
Nobody needs to know.
That is no longer
I
there.
never got those right.
So Christy, are you comfortable leaving the 2 additional math courses as is?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, just another point of discussion. I know, Christy, last time you talked about your passion of wanting to increase the credits from 3 to 4 in math.
Yes.
And we do want to be a STEM town, and math is included in STEM. However, my concern is if we do that, is that leaving us with only 1 elective for this section?
Which would be the same as your humanities.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
all right.
Just wanted to throw it out there. Yes, it would.
Okay, all right, because I'm really giving, I want you to know that didn't fall on deaf ears, and I hate math, so, you know, for me to be even thinking about it is saying something. I
don't
have to
say
say it,
that.
I do, it's the truth, I don't like math.
I will also say, though, just to point out, that students also have 2 general electives to reach 25 credits required by the state, that they could point in any direction.
Okay, another good point, very good, okay.
Sorry, that's okay.
Another question?
Yes.
The 2-point additional STEM courses, are all those one full year courses, or are some of those half-credit courses?
Some of those are half-credit courses.
And some math classes are half-credit courses too, yes?
Currently, no.
No? Okay, like
All of
probability and
all of our math classes currently are full year.
Okay.
If we come forward with this geometry proposal, that would have half-year courses.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Is there one particular course, if you went to 4 credits, that you would like to see all students take?
If we come forward with this geometry and data analysis proposal, I would, part of that proposal would be that half-year problem solving and data analysis would be also required in addition to the Algebra 1.
Okay.
Our English departments are fully staffed to accommodate 4 credits. Would our math department be able to accommodate? If we were to change it to 4 credits now, would our math department be able to, at the schools, be able to accommodate that?
Currently, many of our students are taking 4 years of math.
It was like 95%.
95% at Lyman Hall and 90% at Sheehan.
That's
graduating seniors of 2018 took 4
Already
credits
there.
Well, then why don't we just do it?
What do we,
Yeah,
Of math.
then we should, that should just be. like
So we would decrease
that's
where?
great.
Yeah.
If we upped it to 3 additional math courses, then we would decrease the additional STEM course at the bottom of that.
What do you mean 3 additional? Oh, you
Down
mean
here, 2 credits.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Plus making it 3.
Yeah, what Aaron is saying is if you made it the 4 credits like English, if
Right.
you mirrored that, then you have to trade off because you're adding another credit, so.
We trade off with one of the,
Personally,
with one
I'm
of the
fine with
electives.
it.
I don't
Yeah.
get it. You just have one less elective,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But our students are already electing to take that.
Right,
It's
that's
like-
Right, agreed.
Gosh.
So do you mandate it or do you leave it the way it is? That's the question.
Yeah.
Well, I'm ready to accept this exactly the way it is.
Well, no.
Well, then we'd have, but we're without the additional mandated math credit?
Well, some of us would like something different.
Yes, Ms. Levesque?
My question is, this is off the math topic, but I'm looking at applied chemistry as a course outline that goes back to June 2004.
Which document are you in?
I'm in this subject area, this one,
Okay, got it.
and I'm noticing if we're going to require CTE, some of these are running off of course outlines. How is that working out? Or do we plan on making full-blown curriculum for these
They are.
courses?
It is a slow process, I will say. Rob Covey's working with his department in the area of CTE because many of those classes are in course outline. And he is chipping away at it as he is chipping away at looking at the addition of new courses that are more aligned with current trends in CTE and in looking at, for example, like cybersecurity, which is more in tune with today's day and age versus some of the ones that have been around longer. So from that lens, yes, he's very aware. He's working with his department. He is moving as quickly as he can. And in terms of the course outline, they have a lot of new and improved resources, and he works closely with that department.
So we're expecting to see curriculum in this area since this is going to be a requirement?
Yes. As it gets finished, we always will bring it right to you for approval.
Because I just, when I saw the course outline on, applied chemistry, I think it was, and a couple of other things, I like a prescribed way
Sure.
of going through things, and an
Mhm.
outline sometimes doesn't provide the structure that I'd like to see.
Right. Sure.
So the applied chem course didn't run last year because we added the physical science course, and a lot of the students who used to take applied chem
Right.
were put into the physical science course. So the
you-
department's goal is to
Get rid of
phase,
that?
is to phase the
Okay.
course out, which is why we haven't done any updating on the course. It just didn't seem to be a
Okay.
good use
Well,
of
that
our
makes
energies.
sense, but I mean,
And
they're
to the
quite a-
CTE courses, just if I could speak to that also, since I had 3 hours of meetings today on CTE.
Oh, really? Okay.
Is the fact that we're really trying to make sure that we pick and choose the courses that we want to move from a course outline to a curriculum that are actually going to be value added to the students. So we're doing a lot of collaboration with community colleges, with businesses.
Oh, I like
Because
that
there's
idea.
there's a tremendous amount of effort that takes in writing curriculum, as you all know.
Mm-hmm.
But then also, we have to match the curriculum and the rigor of the curriculum with the expertise of our staff. So that's where we're trying to match those two things, because in order to do so, bless you, true, some of those, some of the courses that we want to move towards, like Carrie mentioned, cybersecurity, that would be a big step for a high school to teach that. We'd probably be one of the very few high schools in the state, if not nationally, that teach that. So the thing is that you have to develop the expertise. So that's why we're working with different organizations to provide that expertise, not take the place of our teacher, but to augment and supplement what we're doing with our teachers. So there's more to come on this, but you're not going to see all of these courses have curriculum in CTE, because some of the courses may no longer be offered. A different replacement might be in its place with a curriculum.
In terms of finance education, I'm just thinking about the 4 math credits. Is there anything in the finance or business department, accounting, something like that, that could carry over and be an additional math credit for kids who aren't normally taking?
You got I know we're both going to say
I know.
something.
Currently, no. However, Rob Covey for CTE and Christy are working together to, I believe the term we used last month was math up some of the CTE classes so that they can filter across one another. So it could count as a math or it could count as CTE. So as we continue to move forward as a curriculum department, we're looking for opportunities, not just between math and CTE, but other things as well, to try to cross-endorse some of our courses.
Yes.
How is this going to appear on our transcripts? Just the way in which it always has appeared as the courses? We're
Correct.
just putting this in to align them in these certain categories?
Yeah, this helps guide the board, and it will help guide our students and families to ensure, and our guidance department to ensure that the buckets are being fulfilled in the manner in which the state prescribes. And if you recall last month from Mr. Covey's presentation about the planning sheet that is being created, so that as students are sitting down with guidance counselors, as families are sitting down with school counselors, that that it is very structured so everyone can kind of make sure that all their I's are dotted and their T's are crossed. Yes.
All right, so I have a scenario. If I take a music and an art class, and they're both half-year classes, so that gets me to the district 1 credit requirement. I fail them both. I can still graduate because it's not a state requirement.
Well, I think that would have to depend, quite frankly. We're saying that, you're putting me on the spot, so I'm just gonna kind of go with it. Thanks,
Well,
Mrs.
because
Braccio.
my next question is about the levels of them, and we've broken this out now so that we
Sure.
now
But
have
technically,
art
this
and CTE.
student can't graduate.
No.
The student can't graduate because the board policy it
Right.
supersedes the state statute. So if you set 28 credits as the graduation requirement, they meet the state graduation, but local board of education trumps the state.
Yeah.
So
So
then-
they would not be able to graduate.
But if you took, I'm just gonna play this out too, if you failed those 2 classes, and then your other elective might be fine arts related, like you have to be,
So you
you
got
have to
to
be
the 9 bucket.
monitoring where you are all the time. So yours, if we go with the proposal, you're saying within the state 9 humanities credits required by the state, Wallingford Board of Education requires at least 1 credit of those 9 credits to be fine arts. You just have to make sure within 4 years, you have fulfilled that and passed that. So it counts for humanities, but for Wallingford, it counts specifically towards fine arts. Does that make sense? We're splitting, we're splitting hairs.
I just worry
We have chosen as a Board of Education through this proposal that we're discussing to define what that humanities bucket is. So once we do that and put that into policy, that becomes the requirement. Does that make sense?
It feels like less personal choice.
Well, to a certain extent, it is. So, when we take 9 humanities credits, but we say as a Wallingford graduate, we really want to make sure our kids have 4 credits of English and 3 credits of social studies. We're defining that broad bucket. And as you saw from the paperwork that we provided, school systems are all over the place and how they're defining that humanities bucket. For the most part, there's a lot of consistency with English and with social studies. And then from there, it starts to splinter off. So you could decide as a Board of Education exactly the way this is, and it's prescribed within each big bucket. Or you could say, yeah, I really like the English and I like the social studies, but then the rest of the humanities could be any way a child decides. So it could be an art, it could be a music, it could be every social studies elective we have to offer. That's the choice of the Board of Education.
So what we're saying is we would combine that 1 credit of fine arts with the 1 credit of additional humanities courses and say we need 2 additional credits.
I'm saying that would be an option to have more student choice versus the structure that's been provided in the proposal.
And I think another concern I have about the fine arts is if you're a musician or if you're an artist, there's more options for higher level courses than if you're looking at a course because it's a requirement that you have to take a music or an art. And I think that could be a challenge for some students, as we've already raised what the requirement is for a varsity scholar, and then we're saying, but you have to take X number of courses that may only be offered at an academic, a general or an academic level.
True. We spoke earlier too, there's also the other side of the coin where you may not have ever conceived that you would love a fine arts class, but now that it's proposed that, yeah, you at least need to fulfill 1 credit worth, and then you fall in love with it, you would never have known that unless that structure had been there. So you could absolutely look at it both ways.
So that would also go for the CTE.
Correct.
You could take the CTE and add it to the additional STEM and make that
Correct.
a 3 credit bucket.
If you wanted to go more broad with the buckets, you would collapse the fine arts credit into the additional humanities courses, and you would collapse the career and technical ed into the additional STEM courses. you still have to fill the bucket, for lack of a better
Right.
word, but you're filling it based on what your notions of interest, passion, desire are versus you must take a CTE or you must take a fine arts.
So in that scenario, if there was a student who took a science class in either freshman or sophomore year and said, wow, this is my passion, that would give them more flexibility to open up and take more science classes in junior or senior year.
Yep. Yes. That is true.
However, unless I'm reading it wrong, there's the potential for 5 electives here. The two electives that get you to the state's 25 credit requirement, and 3 additionals to get you to our proposed 28. So that gives a kid who finds a passion early 5 additional electives that they can choose in any career path, correct? Am I reading
That
that
is
right?
correct.
Okay, just
Nope.
wanted to clear.
You are
Except
correct.
if they have an IEP and they're required to take certain courses based on the IEP, then their choice is smaller. Or, well, I would say VOAG, but perhaps not VOAG, but especially kids with an IEP who are required to take a resource room or something for credit, then their choice is limited.
So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, the IEP piece is that it definitely, you might have some structured opportunities that they have to take in order to benefit them and support their learning. So there might be some credits or some class periods that are taken by that. The other part of this, if I may add, is that as we continue to flesh out the pathways, some of our pathways, in order to make a robust pathway, like foods is automatically 3 credits. So now if you want to expand other pathways where you want to start it, you're already the pathways are locking students in, which is good because it's a passion. So the flexibility that was just talked about, which I know we've talked about also, is not a bad thing. It actually is a benefit to all students, be it if they have an IEP or if they're just looking for some more flexibility. Because again, right now, like our manufacturing courses, it's 1 course, but our goal would be to expand that to maybe 2 more courses. So now if you have this as restrictive, as potentially as this could be seen, there wouldn't be that flexibility for the students to build that. As we look at, for example, our medical careers, now we're looking, and you're going to see, we're recommending another medical careers teacher. So now we could potentially have 3 years of medical careers. That then, again, if you keep it this way, it kind of keeps it a little tighter. I don't know if that made sense or not.
So when you're
Sergio?
talking about, I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I would give a kid a detention for that.
I was just going to say that. You would never take that to your classroom, but so funny.
So I kind of like the idea, what it was mentioned a few minutes ago. In other words, taking the 1 credit for the fine arts and incorporating it into the next line. So now you do have a little more freedom.
Yes, you do.
And you do it there and under STEM, the last 2 there too. Combine
Correct.
those. I kind of like that idea. A little more flexibility.
Yes.
So, but to be honest with you, that worries me because to Carrie's point, then you got the kid that maybe never takes an art course and maybe has a hidden talent that he doesn't even know he has. I don't know. To me, the arts was always
But they have taken it in middle school, and they are making those choices.
So say a little bit more there.
Because the middle school, they have 3 years, so they're taking art.
Okay, so they're getting art in the middle school.
They're
Okay,
taking
this-
music.
okay,
They
okay.
have to take a music. We
Yep.
require a music in the middle school.
That's part of
Okay.
their
We haven't gotten
encore.
rid of that. That's
That's
the
fine. That makes me
danger
feel
when
more
we start looking
comfortable.
at one of the options for facilities when we have that whole pathway that starts in 6th grade. If we were looking at that, which I think I heard from the board and I've heard in other places that that's not an option, I wouldn't support that option because I think then you are potentially locking kids in where then they might not take those other options. But since we still have somewhat of an exploratory model at our middle school, I think that gives them the ability to
Okay,
take
but
those
they are
courses.
definitely getting exposed to art and
Absolutely.
music in this middle school.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
I'm more
We're very
comfortable now.
fortunate as a
I'm-
district we still have those.
Right.
And
Yeah,
we're
exactly.
maintaining them.
Yeah, I'm more comfortable now, thank you.
They also get exposed just to well, no, that's not what I was going to say. When we look at CTE, they also have opportunities within that realm at the middle school as well. So if you talk about collapsing the fine arts into the humanities courses, the CTE collapsing into the additional STEM courses, In middle school, they have the opportunity through the encore rotation to take a family consumer science class or to take a CTE class that gives them that little bit of a taste of what it might be like for them to either ignite a passion or know that it's just not my thing. So it's just something for you to consider.
And to be honest, that's one of the reasons why we've seen robotics become so popular at the high school, because we infused at both middle schools an increased level of robotics, and that's going to increase even more so next year with the grant that we have, the Title IV grant that we wrote. So it's happening, and they are given those options.
I would really like to see the humanities and STEM mirroring each other. If we're requiring 4 credits of English, I really want to see 4 credits of math. If we're staffed for it, we have 90-something% of kids that are already taking it. There could potentially be a pathway for those 10% that aren't to take something in some sort of business math. I really think that those 2 buckets should mirror each other. Does anybody else have thoughts on that? Yes.
I mean, I like the idea too, but I especially like the idea if we could combine the CT and math and really go down that seriously, so that students have other options other than just algebra or geometry or calculus or whatever.
We agree.
Okay.
We agree.
Anybody else have thoughts on math and English mirroring each other?
So where would you add,
You would
instead of saying additional math courses of 2, you'd have 3 there?
We'd have 3 there, and
Where does it
instead of
take away from?
the last additional STEM courses, instead of 2, I would say 1.
Well,
But really, but then we'd
collapsing.
combine those, so it would be 2 additional.
So you'd still have
Right.
2 here,
Right.
2 here. It'd be a mirror.
So if you look up at humanities, it's 4 English, 3 social studies, and then 2 additional humanities.
Right.
And then STEM would read 4 mathematics, 1 being algebra, 3 science, and then 2
Right.
additional STEM courses. And then that way, it does provide a lot more choice and flexibility for our students to explore within that bucket.
So we do have business listed in both the humanities and the STEM. So
We
will
talked about
counselors
that.
flesh that out with
Yeah.
kids?
Yep, so Rob and I initially sat down and went through the CTE course span and kind of identified humanities and STEM. And from there, we would also then sit down with high school admin, guidance, et cetera, to make sure that they aren't seeing something that we didn't see, or they think we're off the mark, if that's, the way we go. And then that way, in the program of studies or curriculum planning guide, we would identify by either humanities or STEM under the CTE realm, so that students and families would know kind of how it connects back to those broader buckets.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm just concerned about will there be will there be a variety of math courses that will match the interest of all students? Now, I say that because I know I'm gonna get pounced upon, but
Yeah, no, but it's a good question. It's a good
because I
question.
do know, it won't only come from her. There are some kids who just struggle in math, let's face it. I mean, you can't take that away. They do. And I don't care what you say about, well, we teach differently and all this other stuff. I don't wanna hear
Well,
it.
first,
Conversely, there are kids that struggle reading and
Yeah.
struggle writing.
That's true.
and we make them do 4 years of that. I think the thing is, you have to remember, this is for incoming freshmen. So we have
Some
some time to build and bring to you those courses that we're
Okay.
going to implement, because really the first 3 years are pretty much set in stone. So we have 4 years to get to that senior year. I mean, I wouldn't wait 4 years, but we have about 3 years to get those courses developed and planned at that point. So I think we have to remember that this is not for every graduating
I know.
senior next year.
So what I was going to add is that I think we need, because I think I've discussed this with, where did she go? Oh.
She's hiding.
I got a real mad and she left. Because I really do believe that there are a number of freshmen who go into high school that do not have some of the basics. And algebra is not gonna help them with that, Algebra 1, or geometry. I've seen it happen over and over again for years. You know, like I think I mentioned this the last time. There are many teachers who do not get through that whole book in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And many kids don't get to a lot of the skills that they need. And we're saying all the time that kids go to college and they still need remedial math. Well, what are we gonna do about it here in this town? Are we gonna do something, offer a course for those kids who are not ready for Algebra 1 in 9th grade? Is there gonna be some kind of a basic math course to help them get those things that they missed in the lower grades? How do we figure that out? Maybe some kind of an entry exam. But I really think I need to.
So what we have in place is we have our 2-credit algebra. Currently, that 2-credit algebra, only 1 credit goes towards their math requirement. Whereas if we went to 4 years of math, we could take that 2-credit algebra and make both of those credits count towards their math requirement. And the additional lab day of that course is to do exactly what you said. Hit on those skills and those prerequisite skills that they need to be successful in algebra. So you have your regular algebra class and an additional lab where they're hitting on some of those skills that you're talking about.
But go back to what you said at first.
Our 2-credit algebra course, currently 1 of those 2 credits counts towards their math requirement. The other credit is an elective credit.
So if we did the 4 years,
Used to.
we could actually make now both credits of that algebra class count towards their math credit. So there would no longer be the elective credit, which technically that's why.
So the reason we have it as an elective credit right now is because we don't want students to just take 2 years worth of math, meaning they take the 2-credit algebra, then take geometry, and then do not take math as a junior or senior. So we didn't want that option in play. With the 3-credit math requirement, that's why we don't allow that second part of that course to count as a math requirement.
All right, but do you see being a math teacher or
Yes.
in your position, do you hear a lot of math teachers say that these kids come into the high school not prepared
Yes.
with a lot of basic skills? So I mean, is there an opportunity or thought to at least offer a basic math class in the freshman year?
We have to offer grade level math.
Grade level.
Yes. So, and we infuse that with those skills to help them be successful in it.
You
And that's
infuse
what
that into the algebra class?
Yes, that's the 2-credit algebra. That's the purpose of that course.
That class meets every day.
Correct. As opposed to every other day, which our regular algebra meets.
Okay.
So they're getting 84 minutes of math every day. So on an A day, they would be getting their algebra curriculum, and on a B day, they would be hitting those skills to help support that work.
Is there a curriculum already written for that?
Yes,
Sorry, I didn't know that. But
that's okay.
Now for 5
Yes.
6 years.
I forget these things. Okay. How do you find out who needs those skills? By teacher recommendation?
We work off of teacher recommendation. We have a rubric, so we look at 5 different things. So it's not just teacher recommendation, but there's scores. We're using our performance indicators currently at the middle school, so how they're performing related to those grade level indicators. Their STAR scores, their SBAC scores, all of that comes into play.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any further discussion on the humanities and STEM? Okay, so let's move forward. PE and wellness.
Can I just clarify? I'm
Yes.
sorry, just for my own notes.
Yes.
Meaning that you're keeping it, you're mirroring one another?
Do we want to take
Maybe you could take consensus
Sure,
on that?
sure. Let's take consensus on the humanities piece. 9 credits, 4 being in the English department, 3 being in the social studies department, and 2 credits of the elective, combining the bottom 2 in that box.
Right, so we're
One
taking
fine
out the
art, one
1.0
additional
fine arts
humanities.
and
Yep,
just
combine
doing
those and make that
2.0
2.
additional humanities courses.
Correct.
Okay.
Ms. Raccio?
Yes.
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 Great, thank you.
Moving down to STEM, same thing, mirroring the humanities department, requiring 4 credits of math, with the caveat that the Algebra 1 2-credit course counts towards those 4 credits. 3 credits in science, and we'll combine the 2 career and tech ed and additional STEM courses to make 2 additional electives in that department. Ms. Raccio?
Yes.
2 additional electives?
No, one
I think
additional.
it's 1 additional.
Well,
Say-
2
say that
total.
two total.
2 total electives.
Yes, yes, okay.
Sorry, 2 total electives.
Okay, yes.
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 Before I say anything, I gotta get clarification again. So the 2 credit algebra course we were talking about, right? It meets every day. That's 2 credits right there in the first year of school, first year of high school.
Right.
So that means only 2 other
Years.
math courses after that.
Correct.
So it's really 3 classes.
3 years.
3 years,
years.
4
3 years.
classes.
They could still have a senior year with no math if they so chose.
Okay, yes.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so moving forward, PE and wellness, the committee's proposing 2. Discussion? My concern, oh, Ms. Raccio, go ahead.
No, go
Before
ahead.
Ms. Raccio starts, can we just do PE and health, like discuss it at the same time, because they kind of go together?
PE education and wellness and health and safety for a
Yes.
total of 3 credits. Sure. Ms. Raccio?
Thanks.
I just had a question on the worksheet that we got. I don't know if the sample students were in here or not, but it looked like the matrix that you had sent us, knowing that we would have to hire, you're all over it, aren't you, Mrs. Latour? You have it
No,
in
I'm
there.
gonna try in my stack of papers to find which one you're talking about.
So when I looked at all the sample students, it
Yep.
looked like your matrix only had 1.5 PE courses.
Because those student schedules, and Mr. Corso, correct me if I'm wrong, are based on actual student schedules, which is what we do now. So where there's elective pieces in these student schedules, you could fill in the additional, health. Health is going to require, it's a staffing. I think I know where you're going with your
Well,
question.
PE, don't we have to take 4 half-year?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And health is 1/2 year currently. So going up to the additional half of health that we have to add may wind up requiring additional staff, because if current enrollment stays the way it is, and this is where it's hard to predict, we might need more teaching time. It's gonna depend on enrollment.
Okay,
And
because when I
class size.
looked at them, all of those schedules had 1.5 for PE, so I didn't know if we were suggesting, because I thought we asked for,
The first schedule has.
Yeah, no, those schedules you're looking at are existing schedules for students that were given in the spreadsheet. So those are under our current requirements. So if we move to the health requirement, the current recommended 3 credits, what that means for both Lyman Hall and Sheehan is next year, if they were in 9th and 10th grade, the health requirements, we would need an additional health teacher in each building. Our current sections, we have 12 health sections. We would be going up to 22 health sections.
But again, this is being phased in for freshmen,
Freshmen.
and that's if you're choosing to teach
Right,
health
that's when
freshman
Tony
year.
had talked about it
So the
being 9th and
question-
10th grade.
So the thing is, I think it would be premature for us to say that we need 2 additional health teachers come the fall of 2019.
Well, it depends on if you put it in 9th grade, like had been mentioned, we
Yeah.
would. If we
So we have to
chose
still,
later.
we have to look at that because enrollment shifts and,
Right.
your, and Mr. Zacco's review of course sections, there might be some
Yep.
Right,
differences
because
there.
logistically, you could look to roll health beyond 9th or just 10th grade. Right?
You could.
You could take it at any point.
Well, it depends on how you write it
enrollment.
into the
Correct.
curriculum.
Correct. And unfortunately,
Yeah,
I mean, I
currently-
shouldn't say unfortunately, that's the state
There's a
requirement
couple.
that we have to
Right.
meet.
Right.
okay, so I guess on the schedule I looked at, there was a student who had 2 PEs in 1 year, and then another year didn't take PE at all.
Correct.
So that's, okay.
And
Yeah,
oftentimes,
exactly. I
that's oftentimes it's our ag students, because once they get later on in ag, they do not have the ability to take those courses later on. We'd have to have them miss out on an AP opportunity for PE, so we try to get that earlier in their academic careers, so we don't have to cut them short on those academic requirements, or wants, really.
I actually would like to weigh in on that one wellness credit. to me, that needs to be taken as early as possible in a high schooler's career. If they're touching on topics that are discussed in our wellness survey, I don't want to wait on wellness until junior or senior year when it might be too late.
Yeah, I agree.
So if that's the case and we have to do it next 9th or 10th grade, then I think, are we looking at hiring additional teachers to do that?
We're looking at a variety of scenarios for a lot of teachers. So yes, we would be looking at that. But again, the high school schedules, and again, it's not, there's a lot of variable qualities of high school schedules, because if we actually gave to the board in our budget with the high school principals project for staffing every year in January, we'd be adding about 5 teachers every year to both high schools because of the fact that the numbers are so in flux. Because they base it on course requests rather than necessarily course placement. They sometimes don't pull out study halls, and so we have all these numbers, and then kids who leave our district also because of private schools. So at present time, yes, we would recommend part of a health teacher, at least part of a health teacher, but we have to look at that more closely, and we have to see where we fall. So yes, you're gonna see a lot of staffing requests. We also need EL, we need a variety of staffing requests. But we want to, I don't want to say that definitively at the end of the year, we're going to need to hire both those teachers, because we're going to rely on, as we do every year, and they do a great job, rely on the principals to come back to us and tell us what are the final numbers.
Ms. Purcell?
All right, I disagree about having it all early on. First off, I think it needs to happen each year, and I think maturity-wise, what you teach is very different, what you teach to a junior and senior than a freshman and a sophomore. And I don't know if, Tony, you want to add to anything about how we structure it, but I definitely think that when you talk wellness and things, and you're talking about things in the survey that the students take, once students drive, the risky behaviors that they do change, okay? And they become more independent, and so you need to talk to them at those times too. It can't happen all early.
Well, I think if you also look, wellness is lumped in with physical education. So if it stays at the 2 credits and they do, half a credit each year, you can incorporate some of those wellness topics within the physical education curriculum. And Tony, you can jump in at any point. Whereas the health and safety, and maybe Tony, you can refresh everyone kind of what are some of the topics and how they're differentiated between phys ed and wellness, and then health and safety.
Certainly. Underneath health and safety, excuse my voice, underneath health and safety, again, there's certain topics that are required by the state of Connecticut. And that's a long, long list, and it's good that we're going to be expanding upon that. So I had read this last time, if you would bear with me. Human growth and development, nutrition, first aid, CPR, disease prevention, substance abuse prevention, dangers of gang membership, accident prevention, safe social medical use, community and consumer health, youth suicide prevention, AIDS, cancer awareness, sexual abuse and assault awareness and prevention. So those are all the topics that would fall underneath the health and safety, and that's what we're looking to split between as I had suggested, a 9-10 health course and an 11-12 health course. The Connecticut School Health Survey shows very clearly that there's certain habits and behaviors that are students are more at risk for, or they're showing that they're participating in more in 11th and 12th grade. Again, drinking. For freshmen, only 6% of freshmen are reporting that they had a drink in the last 30 days. That jumps up to 39% for seniors. So I do think we need that health class junior or senior year to address those behaviors that are different as the students get older. As far as physical education and wellness, what I see under that is it's sticking with more of a movement-based course, like physical education. And there I want to focus on, again, the wellness continuum of awareness, education, and growth. And when we think about the difference between 9-10 and 11-12, which is the structure we have right now, we have freshmen and sophomores together, and we have juniors and seniors together. Those juniors and seniors are taking the concepts a lot further, and they're working on goal setting and planning. They're creating their own workouts. and they're applying what they're learning in physical education to their real life. And that is that's a more rigorous, that is a more advanced concept, and that's why it should be held and kept at that 11-12 level.
So you would propose the health instead of 1 full credit, 2 half credits, is what you're
Yeah,
saying?
I would propose a half credit of health, and that could help with some of the flexibility with scheduling, because I know right now it's very difficult, especially at Lyman Hall with the ag students, to give them health strictly sophomore year. The health course is kind of geared towards sophomores right now, and so I would suggest having a half credit of health for 9 and 10. And so if it's easier to put freshmen into it, we can certainly do that. And then we have another half credit of health for 11-12.
So just for clarity purposes, and I would defer to the 2 principals, if it were a half credit, because then is that still a full-time person per school, or is that a part of a person per school potentially?
So again, not to
This is
add
where it gets fuzzy.
confusion, but it would really depend on the request. If every 9th grader who came in requested it, we'd have a full 9th grade class at about 2:30 and a full sophomore class, the current existing students that would need health. So that would require a full teacher by section. If half the 9th grade class did, we're looking at, it would require a few additional sections potentially. Could we eat that up, or does that shift a little bit? So that's hard to predict right now. But again, I think what Enzo could speak for himself, but I think what we find, especially with our talented students academically, is they look to get everything out of the way as early as they can so that they can focus on those more advanced classes later in the year. So, I mean, as Dr. Menzo said, yes, we could be looking at a lot of staffing. No, maybe not so much.
And again, to the credit of both principals and both schools, every spring, what do we do? Usually right after April vacation, we sit in the office and we go through and we say, okay, how many, and then we decide, do we add a 6th section of something rather than hiring a full-time teacher, because that costs, so we do all of this balancing, because by that point, both high schools have a better understanding of who's going to be in the seats. We have some ideas of who are not going from the middle school because of private school acceptances start coming in, all those things. So it's tough. I think we'll err on the side of caution, going back to your point, Ms. Corso, about what do we put in the budget. We'll err on the side of caution, but that's something that you might see adjust. And I don't want you to think we're adjusting it for any other reason that it's based on the data that we get, the latest data.
Can we take a quick pause? Is there a score to the game yet, Enzo?
I'm going there.
You're going there now, okay, sorry. I just wanted to know there's a
I'm not
score.
aware of the score yet. Go ahead.
And just to Dr. Menzo's point, this living in 2 worlds is difficult for us. So we will be living in 2 worlds for a while. We'll have a few graduating on the old standard and then a few with the new standard. So although we might need a teacher next year, the year after, we could have no one taking health, theoretically.
Exactly.
And then we have, we'll be living through hiring and then holding on to maybe,
well, and that was the thing that you took the words out of my mouth, because that was one of the things when I was looking at your stuff over the weekend. That was one of the challenges, because some of the way it falls, and Ms. Corso, it's 14. Unfortunately, the score is not in our favor. 14-0. Berlin.
quarter are we in?
They just ended the first quarter.
The only thing I'd add to what Tony was talking about with the 9, 10, 11, 12, I've had that conversation with my PE teachers about what their preferences would be, and it was just what you both said about having that 9, 10, 11, 12 for the maturity of the topics was a big part of it, and for flexibility as well. So they definitely echoed that sentiment. As far as the hiring and that factor, since our current sophomores are grandfathered into the old standard, they wouldn't need that junior, senior health. So you've got some time on your hands here, because it would be the incoming freshmen that would need that 2 half credits of health. So we don't have to immediately offer that 11-12 section. That could be, that's not necessary.
And we also have to recall, and Ms. Latour reminded me, was the fact that our physical education certification is K-12. So some of our elementary staff don't necessarily always have full schedules because of the way the sections fall. So we do have some flexibility of having people travel and teach at different schools.
Right.
So that's another way to more efficiently use our staff. We do that right now. We slice and dice, and our staff is very accommodating to us. So I think that would be another option. And Patty, you know this
No, I was
from
gonna say, they're-
experience.
and they're health certified too, so.
Your health, and we're very
Yeah.
fortunate because we've been hiring both, and both certifications. Some districts have not done that, and we've been very fortunate, so both our health and PE, so we have the availability of pulling people from other levels.
And all our teachers are certified in PE.
Yep.
That was my
That was your
question.
question?
So I'm good.
That's frightening.
I am too. All subjects, Katie.
No. He said that last time.
Yes.
With the additional time that we expect to have in health and safety, do we anticipate offering things like certification for first aid and CPR for our students?
That's absolutely something that we're going to explore.
Bless you.
And we do a certain amount of that. Again, it's required right now to teach first aid and CPR, but the law is very gray. We're not required to offer the certification, but that would be a very nice piece to add.
I think that would
And
be a
the district
great
is
piece.
looking to add more certifications, opportunities for our students, and so that would take additional training for our teachers that we would have to provide, professional development, but that's certainly a direction we want to go, yes.
And that would be a good dovetailing for our CNA program as well.
True. And since we do offer district-wide fifth graders who would get or don't get certification, but they get the CBR training, which we're one of the only schools in the state that do that, this is a nice continuation of that.
Any other discussion? I'm not gonna beat a dead horse. You all know how I feel about physical education and reducing that credit. Why don't we go ahead and take consensus on the 2 credits of PE and wellness and 1 credit of health and safety?
Now that we've determined that PE won't be online, yes.
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 No. But it's approved. Moving forward, world language, that's 1 credit. Committee's suggesting 1 credit. The state suggests 1 credit. Is there any discussion about bumping that to 2 credits? We're okay at leaving it at 1 credit? Let's
I
take,
have one
yes,
question?
yes.
If a middle schooler carries the credit in, does that exempt them from taking any world language in high school?
So first of all, the middle schooler would need to pass the same examination that a high schooler would in order to gain credit for that, as it counts towards a graduation requirement. So if that were to occur, then potentially, yes, that student would not need to take another world language class,
And
technically.
we give that exam now, so that's no change.
No,
We
I
don't
don't
give
think
that
we
exam?
do.
But we give them credit for it.
Yes, it's a credit on their transcript, yes.
I think there's actually 1 teacher that gave the high school exam last year. Or midterm, sorry.
Help me, because I know I have
We
credit.
currently do not have our 8th graders take the Algebra 1 final exam or the World Language final exam. They do not currently take that.
But they get high school credit.
They do on their transcript.
Yes.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, the new
does that
statute
mean,
says you
yeah?
have to give the equivalent high school test to get the credit for high school.
Well, I think there's,
Am I,
For it to count for their math requirement, they would need to take the Algebra 1
Exactly.
exam.
okay.
so
Correct.
see,
But that's
presently,
new,
Requirement.
that's new in
Not-
this
You can still
statute.
Yeah.
carry the credit over, but for it to count towards the requirement, you have to pass the examination.
the actual examination. So to go back to your question, if we stay with present practice, then that person who carries the credit over from world language to high school, they would still have to take 1 more to meet the state requirement. Because they have to take 1 at the high school level that meets the high school curriculum requirement.
That
We
makes
could-
sense. I get it.
Yes.
What it does, it just helps them take the next course higher.
Correct.
Correct.
It just advances their trajectory. That was the whole point, was to advance their trajectory so that they could get to, we have some 5, level 5 world language students, actually, I think we have somebody 6, to be honest. So that was the whole idea, was to push that forward. But because we don't give that high school exam as 8th graders, then you're absolutely right. We can't give them the graduation credit that the state is requiring, but we could give them a credit to move them forward.
So would that be in the bucket between like the 25 to 28? Is that,
Yes.
okay.
Ms. Castelli?
So, can you please explain to me, you get this credit on your transcript, but it's not part of the state requirement? I don't get that. What's that mean?
Just like on the transcript, you have courses and credits that are not tied to graduation standards, that don't count towards the English requirement or the
Okay.
math requirement.
Okay.
You still have the credit and the course displayed on your transcript with
Like
the grade
band
and
or
otherwise.
something like
Okay,
Because many of our students
okay.
graduate with more credits than they're required to.
Yeah, and I would want to get clarification to Ms. Racho's question, because we would have, I don't think it falls under one of those credits. I think it's
No,
just an
because,
added credit.
Right, you heard me make a
No,
noise.
no, I
so-
didn't. No, I that time I didn't.
Okay.
And I'm too far away for you to kick me. So,
So let's take consensus on world language. Or is there any other discussion, further discussion, questions? Ms. Raggio?
Yes.
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 Yes. Mastery-based diploma assessment, can you talk a little bit about how that is going to get accomplished?
I don't
I mean,
have
that's a state requirement.
It is,
We
and
have
the
to meet
state really
that.
hasn't provided much guidance towards that. Most districts that I've spoken to or seen use capstone as the requirement for that.
And-
That doesn't mean that that's the only way you can, fulfill. But there is a lack of detail right now in regards to that. So as more information comes, I will gladly provide it. That
And-
way it provides some opportunity for our kids.
Is capstone currently a graduation requirement?
No.
It's not. So how many kids are taking capstone at each school?
It's in your packet,
Yeah, it's not-
actually. The history of capstone and as it relates to the capstone experience and the capstone project is on one of the pages of your, if it's in the same order as mine, you're looking at 3, 4, it's not numbered, I'm sorry, 5, 6, 8 pages in,
This one, it's in here.
sorry.
So I think the years are the graduation years.
The years are the year of graduation, yes.
So I'm a little concerned. Are we going to have the staffing to fulfill this requirement, or we have a couple of years to figure this out?
We have a couple
When
of
would you wanna
years
do
to
this?
figure it out. Additionally, this is the first year that we kind of planned out and have students participating, not many, but some, in alternate routes to capstone, so it's not a class. It is an experience within a class. For example, culinary has that opportunity, ag science has that opportunity. We identified a few to start with, just while we kind of dipped our toes into this new experience, and we will continue to work to expand opportunities for students within a different course to still meet the requirements for that capstone, and then that way free up some of their schedule as well.
Yes.
Can we expand, like, there's nothing really written, like what is going to be filled in here, and I know you don't know yet, but what about things like internships or things like that? Could those kind of credits fulfill something like that?
Most likely, yes, as long as we continue to align to particular standards and opportunities, yes. It's pretty vague at this point.
Okay.
So, you know, in the current time period where all of the districts are reviewing this and making these very decisions, capstone is the clear go-to. But there are a lot of opportunities here
I would
that
like
we
to
need
see
to
it
vet out.
expanded, yeah.
Absolutely.
Beyond just
And
capstone.
would it be a pass-fail?
That's what it is now.
It is now.
that's for up to discussion.
Right.
That is what it is right now, and to be honest, I think that lends itself to some challenges with students wanting to take it because of the GPA and the impact on GPA. So I think that the idea was, and it's always been, that once it becomes mandated as a requirement for all students, then we would potentially look to make it a traditionally graded class rather than pass-fail. But until we got there, since it was more of a pilot phasing in process, we stayed with the pass-fail. So that's something that the board will have to decide as we move forward. But I think that this also ties into Ms. Purcell's last comment, was that when we get to the second part, when we look at the policy over the next few months, we need to look at what can fit into that bucket. So looking at internships, looking at apprenticeships, looking at potentially some additional opportunities in terms of research, whatever it may be, we need to figure that out. And we're starting to make that list to make it more, really more broad for
Well,
students.
If it's a mastery-based diploma assessment, they would either master the concept or not, which is a pass-fail, right? In theory?
True. I guess, again, it depends, because mastery-based, you could also say that you could have a proficiency scale, so you could have exceeds being proficient, below standard, or, the 1 through 4 traditional model. So, that's, again, I think those are the things that we have to grapple with as we move forward.
Any questions or comments?
I mean, it's mandated by the state, so we don't really have a choice about that one anyway.
No, we're just hoping that there's more guidance, or, like they've done in the past, they'll push this out another year. I mean,
No.
you never know. I hope not.
Yes.
I know some districts have capstone with the option for students, whether or not they want it graded. They have like a rubric and a student decides if they want pass-fail or wants it graded. Do we have anything that's optional for the students to decide if they want grades?
We did not go in that direction. That was something that the team, when we first started looking at this about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, that's what they looked at, and they chose not to go in that direction because, again, there was always that dangling that this graduating class this year was supposed to be the first
And then it got
class.
bumped, and it got bumped.
And it
and
got
bumped.
bumped
Okay.
and bumped and bumped.
Typical of the state.
Okay, mastery-based diploma assessment, Ms. Raccio?
Yes.
Ms. Caselli?
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, so the next are 2 additional electives to get to the minimum state requirement of 25. Excuse me. Ms. Raccio?
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, so lastly is to up our requirements by 3 additional credits, to go from 25 to 28. Can we discuss the reasons behind that?
Can I ask a question about it before? Maybe I'm just a little slow in this. So, and I also need to understand, if somebody fails a class, they don't graduate. So you have to have 28 in order to get a diploma? No.
We haven't
No.
decided that.
No.
Or
On the
maybe I'm-
25, but to be an enrolled student, you had to have
Okay.
been enrolled in 28 credits.
Course load of 28,
But
but you
you
have to earn 25.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, so I was up there in the buckets of what was required. That was where I was confused before then. Okay, in the humanities.
And this is a half a credit change from what's currently required.
Correct.
Half a credit per year.
Per year.
So 2 additional from what's currently required. So we're actually proposing 2 additional total amount of credits that they have to take, but not that they have to pass necessarily.
Correct. And it's undetermined, so it provides a lot of opportunity and choice for a student.
Can I ask another one when you're ready?
Yes.
No, I'm sorry, Kathy.
Kathy?
your hand up
So
first.
I just want to make one comment. In my initial perspective, and it's always subject to change based on what I hear from other people, if we're going to require 28 credits, then I feel they need the 28 to graduate. Because otherwise, why are we requiring it? That's just my incoming opinion.
I agree.
That's a good point.
I think 28, requiring them to pass 7 classes a year is a heavy load for some kids. Not for all, but for some, I think it's a heavy load. I think about schedules with students with an IEP that have that required resource room. They have the credits that they have to earn, and whatever else they do outside of school. I still think 7 credits, requiring them to take 7 credits per year that's still a heavy load for some kids. And we talk a lot about We talk a lot about mental health and wellness for kids. And I think that some kids within a school day, some kids use their study halls really effectively to do their work for what we perceive as really effective. But other kids may be using their study halls to just veg out because that's what they need to do at that point. So I'm just concerned that going to 7 credits per year is it's a heavy load for a lot of kids. It can, and especially, I mean, in college, you take 5 with a whole lot of free time. Ms. Purcell, you take 5 per semester.
Oh, 5 classes. I
Yes.
thought you were saying 5 credits. I was
You
like,
take
what?
5 classes per semester with
Okay.
a whole lot of free time.
Yeah. All right. I have 2 questions. One is, you were saying that most students do take more than what we already ask right now. What's the average that most students do? I know, it's another question
I
that
don't
you
know.
don't
I
have
don't
the
have that
research on
piece of
probably.
data in front of me.
Okay, no, I was just curious.
I can find out for you, though.
No, it's okay. That was one question. And then also, we were talking about the IEP. Can they write in an IEP that they don't have to have certain credits? So that can already be accommodated for if need be? Is that yes or no?
Yes. I know specifically, and I'd have to go back to the language that's in the statute, but specifically as it relates to world language and I believe any of the other requirements, it does state that through the PPT process, exemptions can be made.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Castelli.
I'd like to hear from administration why this recommendation was, when I know I was part of the, team that did it.
You were, I think you were in the room.
But actually, but I mean, I think it was kind of like just brought to our attention and we kind of said, sure, but for the purpose of everybody, no.
Sure.
Oh my God. No, I know you weren't, No, but.
It was a very long meeting.
It was a very long meeting, it was a very productive meeting, I remember that. But if you could just, I'd ask Carrie if you could please.
Oh, dear.
Why do we feel,
I think
why
there
do
were
we
a couple of
feel-
reasons. If I go back, we looked at making sure that students had opportunities to take a broad range of classes through electives and otherwise. We looked at the time, number of study halls. We looked at, we were looking at that minimum course load requirement, and to be honest, it's all over the place, looking at and digging through the DIRG data and some of other schools that are beyond the DIRG. You can range anywhere from 6 credits to 7.5 in some cases. Credits required for freshmen through junior is one set amount, and seniors is another. So it's just kind of trying to keep our students, 1, with a lot of broad options, 2, keeping a rigorous schedule, not at the default of anybody's ability or need to study or have downtime during the day. But that's kind of, if I'm recalling our conversation well enough, that's kind of the path that we were
Yeah,
on.
I think it was the study halls was a big
Right.
bone of contention.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because I mean, like I said, when you look at it, it's 25% or sometimes 50% of their day, some days could be study hall.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an awful
a
lot
lot.
when you
Yep.
talk about rigor.
Yep.
Yeah.
So again, this is a local requirement now, so this is above and beyond what the state requires, so it's really up to the Board of Education to determine, do we want to keep it the same at 6.5 and kind of see how it goes with everything else that we put into place? Do we want to up it right away? When we think about staffing implications and otherwise, it's the same kind of situation as with the health, where you have to look at enrollment and you look at class size and what the requests are at the given time that you're looking at it. So,
The other option, as was Ms. Latour was just saying, again, this is for this incoming freshman class. So this would change, so the rest of the classes would still be on 6.5. The question is, do you want to, you could go back to the 6.5, but do we go back to Ms. Castelli's question, do you require that they pass 26 credits, 1 credit above the state? So every credit counts. That's just, I'm just going back to your comment, because I know we kind of left that one hanging. Nobody answered your question about the 28, so I'm just trying to circle back around to it. I'm just putting that out there for people to chew on, but if you did go, if you left it at the 6.5, which would give you the 26 credits. And then you did, the state is requiring 25, you would require the 26 that be mastered or be, successfully achieved rather than merely the 25. I don't know.
Did you want to say something?
I did. I think one of the things we referenced, I'm sorry, Patty, at the beginning of the meeting was also looking at the course load requirement potentially differently than we have been, where we look at apprenticeships and internships and college courses and dual enrollment as a part of meeting that minimum course load requirement. Where currently we don't do that. So that does provide some flexibility and some rich experiences for our students while still meeting the expectations of the school district. So that is a conversation that we do need to have, but knowing that it's something to keep in mind while you're grappling between 6.5 and 7.
Ms. Purcell?
Okay, I'm putting my teacher hat on now.
Mm-hmm.
I would not be happy knowing that kids could flunk my class and still, it takes some incentive away, it takes some motivation away. I kind of think that if you sign up for a class, you should try to pass the class.
Oh, go, no, you go.
Ms. Costelli? Ms. Costelli?
I'm sorry.
I forgot, I'm sorry. I'll have to wait for the train to come back.
Most of our students graduate with 26 to 28 credits, and I'd say most are 27 to 28 credits. And I certainly can understand wanting to go more than 25 for the reason if you're going to take my class, then you should pass my class, and I could see that. The reason why I'd be cautious about going all the way to 28 is you have those students that do unfortunately wind up falling behind. They use that study hall time for intervention courses where they're getting pulled from study halls to go into interventions to try to catch them all up. So you're almost creating like a snowball effect. If we're requiring 28, let's say, then they have very little study hall time, and then on top of it, they sometimes get pulled out for interventions during those study halls. So then they really don't have any free time, and it's often those that struggle the most. So I would just be a little cautious at going, all the way to one extreme for those reasons as well, because we could wind up grabbing netting a group of kids that unfortunately don't make it to graduation if we went that far to 28.
I think we have to remember those study halls are 84 minutes long. It's a long time.
They are,
And I don't think they do intervention for 84 minutes. Do you think they do?
they do. When they
They
pull
do.
them, they're quite often. We can't, I wouldn't be able to give you an exact time,
I'd like
but
to know how many kids are receiving intervention.
yeah, that's a number we can get you. So the one thing I'd say is I feel like we're trying to fix a problem we don't have. So right now we ask 6.5 credits per year. At Lyman Hall, we've got 117 kids, so that's basically under 10% of our kids that are at 6.5 credits. And those are students that in my mind really need that additional time for study hall, intervention, and what other we have. We have 536 students taking 7 credits, 227 taking 7.5, and I have 180 students taking 8 credits. So I think just moving it to 7 doesn't really, I don't think we have an issue with it. And I think leaving it at 6.5 provides students that needed flexibility that some of them might need. Not saying they couldn't be successful if we went to 7, but I don't feel like we actually have a problem that this would solve. I think we do pretty well in our kids taking classes. And I understand that study hall is long. That's just the nature of the block schedule. But we have many kids that use it well, and then some, again, that use it that's their recess at the high school level. So.
Mr. Votto, just for the intervention numbers, there's 66 high schoolers in reading intervention and 44 in math. Between both schools, total.
All right, so that's 110 out of total 1,700 kids?
But not all
Ish.
of them are having those kinds of study halls. Some of them have their fuller.
No, just getting intervention, that's what I was asking.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to say you clarified my question from before. So kids can take more than the 26 credits. They can take as many as they can fit in.
90% of them do.
Yeah, okay. So I'm kind of in the ballpark now of thinking we don't really need to move to 7. And we always have that option to do it at a later date, correct?
Correct.
Yes. My thing is I really would, based on tonight's conversation, and I might be out on an island on my own, I would consider if you stay with the 6.5 that you do consider making all 26 credits be mandatory for graduation.
Yes, definitely.
I think
They
that
have to
that
pass.
really does speak to a teacher. You know, I wouldn't want to be that one teacher that the child is just filling my class, their schedule with, that they don't feel the need to do the best in my class.
Is that not a requirement now? They just have to pass the 22
They have the
that
20,
state?
they have the 25, so if they're taking 25 credits to
Oh,
graduate.
25 to
So
graduate, okay.
they're required to have 26
Six.
accumulated,
Right.
but they basically were giving them a credit. But I also think, coupled with what I just said, we do, and I look forward to this conversation because I think it could be exciting for our district and our students. We need to look at what those credits, how they can be attained. They have to be flexible. We have to be more flexible with the way that we could have students attain those credits, especially as they get older. Younger, first 2 years, it's going to be difficult. Freshman and sophomore years, it's going to be difficult to say they're going to have an internship or an apprenticeship. It's impossible to have really that going on. Junior and senior year, you could get more of that.
Ms. Raccio?
Okay, so I'm the mom with the seniors, so I've been living this program guide for 4 years now. Is it going to be the 26 high school credits or 26 middle school, high school credits?
High school.
I'm,
High school.
I was thinking high school.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just want,
But that was just me.
because, I can go, mine's got 32, so it doesn't, like, it can be that high, but what is that number? Because you could bring in
I think
two.
we look at this sheet, which we said earlier, that those high school credits, because we don't presently provide the students with the exam and require the exam, and we're not looking to change that, those would be added credits. So if I came in with my algebra credit and my language credit, I'm going to be graduating with 28 credits, but 26 are required for me to graduate.
Okay, thank you.
yes.
So if we change that to 6.5 credits, it becomes 26 to graduate, which means we take it away from the additional electives.
Right, so we
will
would,
lower that to 1 instead of 2.
right, so the total
So
amount
there
of
goes
elect.
our flexibility that we were talking about before.
No, because there's 2 above also.
I know, but
So-
There's
still.
2 above, and then there
So
are
that becomes
also
3.
2 in the humanities bucket and 2 in the STEM bucket that cover a broad range of courses.
So 7.
So you
So there's
still do
7.
have a fair amount of electives.
Yeah.
Some are more
Still-
prescribed than
And
others.
to Mike's concern, Mike, they can still take additional courses.
I know.
It's
Yeah.
just not part of the requirement.
Requirement.
So we're not taking away their flexibility, because kids that want to still have the flexibility to take additional courses, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sure.
yes,
And they have to pass all those courses to graduate.
yes.
But they wouldn't have to pass any that they were taking above and beyond the 26, correct? So in other words, if,
No, I don't.
Right.
right,
Sometimes a student may fail a course, say sophomore year, and then junior year, he or she has to take 7 to make up for that.
Yeah.
Or remedial, remedial in the summer, I'm not sure.
Right.
Credit recovery.
Yep.
Okay, so let's take consensus on the 6.5 credits, and the proposed minimum course load is 26. Ms. Raccio?
Yes,
And wait a minute, and should we also add to that, they have to pass?
Pass.
Take and pass,
Yeah,
26
they need to
credits.
pass 26 credits.
high
That's right.
school, take and pass in high school, 26,
credits.
and they have to
6
pass.
point, and you must be enrolled in 6.5 credits per year to be considered a full-time student, and we don't have part-time student status. Correct? Ms. Raccio?
Yes.
yes?
Yes.
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 No.
Yes. Okay, so, Ms. Latour, does that help?
It does, and I do want to say, you know, all of the questions and the conversation were great. I do need to thank the curriculum coordinators, the IT department, Bill Baxter, and the high school principals and staff for helping gather all this information, because it really was a lot of data to dig through, and I could not have done it without them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, I tortured you with my questions, but they're appreciated.
But we
And this
appreciate
is
it.
helpful information that we can refer back to.
Yes.
Yes.
Can we get a score update before we go on?
Twitter has it at, hold on, 21.6.
All right, no more updates.
21.6, 4 minutes ago,
In half?
the halftime.
Oh, well, that's good.
Jake Smith, 61-yard touchdown from Terzi. Okay, so moving forward, item 4 on our agenda, a presentation regarding our strategic plans.
I do want to apologize because Mark and David are not here, not because of their own desire not to be. It wasn't, I think the message was communicated when they were at a meeting. They were not at our meeting, so I apologize for them not being here. I'll take the blame for that.
Thank you.
So if you have questions, we can go through their updates, and obviously you know that they're at your next meeting at operations, both of them. So you could ask questions, or you could send them to me if you have questions to be shared. Let me just hook up. I just gotta wait for you. I think it's on the wrong side.
They're playing St. Joseph's. Is that who they're playing? They're playing St. Joseph's, right?
No, Berlin.
Berlin? They're playing Berlin. Oh, St. Joseph's would be the next one.
So, for the past several years, we do an update this time around. It's kind of a precursor to the budget. So there, you kind of see some things that you're gonna see in the budget. So there aren't as many surprises. So I'll take you through this, and we'll pause if you have a question. Poor Dominic got this place.
Sorry.
Oops, sorry. So we obviously, this year we added a food services plan to it. Last year we didn't have the food services, so we did add that to it. So you'll see David's plan in here. So what we did was we look at short-term, midterm, long-term. So short-term, things that we're working on presently into next year. Midterm is 2 to 3 years out. Long-term is beyond that, 3 to 5 years out. So we tried to look at in terms of the strategic planning. You have the actual updates in the chart format, also that go on the website tomorrow. So those will go on there. Yeah, those charts. So the PowerPoint is just a companion piece. So what it was you know, we took the documents, and then each of us dropped in the highlights of where we were moving forward in each of our areas that we were responsible for. So really, there should be nothing of a surprise to you in the short term for the community outreach and partnerships, because we've talked all about this at your meetings. So it's pretty transparent, pretty clean. It's STEM, it's the Naviance, it's continuing to work with career pathways development, the curriculum. We also drew to this one with Karen's assistance, the Securely system. We're going to be working, she and I have a meeting tomorrow, on rolling out the anonymous reporting for bullying and other cases. So that's coming in here, and then you know that we already implemented the Securely monitoring software. So those are really some of the short-term highlights, which I think I did this one, so I gleaned from where we were. More of the short-term, looking at special education, reinstitute the special education services fair. That's going to happen this spring, March 5th. At Sandries, Stillwood, we're going to use that space. And then try to reinvent the special ed PTAC. That's a work in progress. And what we meant by that is just to increase the parent involvement and engagement. We're looking at revising the special ed packet for next year, so I'm working on that now with Lisa and Donna and clerical support. And then we're also, this was a parent idea, was to research the development of the special education parent mentor program. And actually Mike was at that meeting, and Tammy, when a parent brought it up as an opportunity. So we're researching it first. There is a community group that's put together informally of parents that are kind of offering support to each other. But we're looking at it that the district wouldn't be responsible, but more so that the district would just give them a space, give them an opportunity. Because we don't want it to be where they feel the district is there and they can't maybe talk freely about what they need to do for their children. Investigate and take consensus on implementing middle school survey for the spring. Of course, it would have been good if I put in there, this is the risky behavior survey, but it's risky behavior light. It's more of a, if you want to jump in, Tony.
So it's developmentally appropriate for the middle school students, and I currently have our health educators at both middle schools who are spectacular, Chrissy Rich and Scott Robinson, looking through the survey before we actually bring that to you. It's only 49 questions, and this comes directly from the CDC. This is a national survey. We're familiar with the Connecticut School Health Survey, which also came from the CDC. The state of Connecticut took that on and kind of made it their own. But for this middle school one, we're going with the CDC version to start out. And the discussion I had with the health educators was where would this have the least impact on instructional time? How could we do this the most efficient, effective way? How long will it take? Again, they're looking at the 49 questions right now to see what questions do we like, ensuring that they are developmentally appropriate for our students. Are there any questions that should be added? And we had talked about the spring, but I was kind of hoping to push it back to the fall of next year, approximately a year from now, because I would like to do it at the exact same time as the high school school health survey. So everyone does it at the same time, and we get the results around the same time, and so on and so forth.
So the key to this is that we'll be coming back to you. I know the coalition has approached us a while back. We've been waiting to get some information. We got the information, and working with youth and social services on that. They've been very supportive, both groups. So we just want to move forward with that. The other thing is, of course, the vaping prevention initiatives in collaboration with Health Department, Youth and Social Services, Police Department, and the coalition. Continuing to message that. We just had posters that were being put up around the buildings. I know that Mr. Loomis has met with Craig Turner from Youth and Social Services last week, and I encouraged him to bring up to Mr. Turner, when is our next meeting? The last meetings we've been facilitating, and this is a community issue. It was initially started by Youth and Social Services. The second meeting was actually scheduled by the Board of Education as a follow-up. So we're just encouraging that we keep the momentum going, because it really is, if we're going to do this well, we need to have that community impact and that collective impact working on that.
Yeah. I just had a question about the middle school one. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have a section about vaping on that particular thing, since that seems to be such a big
That's
issue.
something that we're going to add. It's
Okay.
not currently in there, but
Right.
yeah, that's a big topic at our secondary level. So we obviously didn't ask about that in the previous high school Connecticut school survey. And when we sit down to reflect on the next administration, which again would be approximately a year from now, I would like to also add that to the high school survey. But coming from the high school administrators, we know that it's a big issue, and we've incorporated it in health classes at the middle school level. It doesn't manifest necessarily as much at the middle school level during the school day, but it's something that needs to be addressed lower and lower levels. So we'll certainly have that a part of it.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have one question and one comment. And maybe this happened before I was on the board, but I remember seeing a PowerPoint when Celeste was here on the data. Did we get all the tabulated data that went behind that?
And that was
another thing
Dr.
I had
Menzo
asked Mr. Loomis to check on.
Yeah, and Celeste's position has been consolidated, and she's got more and more on her plate. And we do not have we were given the draft data,
Which
but,
shared
and that was shared in the spring, but. The final draft has not been, excuse me, the final draft data has not been shared yet. No one has that here in Wallingford. Youth and Social Services doesn't have it. We don't have it. I'm a little nervous to push Celeste too much, because everything she does for us is free, and she goes above and beyond for us. So I'm a little nervous to push her too much, but We need that data soon. If we're thinking about administering it again, I mean, we need to actually look at it more in depth.
And my other thing, and I know I've already shared it with you, Dr. Menzo, is I did go to the vaping presentation that was held at the senior center, and it was packed. And it was really packed because some of the little leagues, the coaches mandated that their students go to the presentation with their parents. And then there was a presentation for a certain period of time with parents and students in the room, and then the students went in a separate room for their questions, and the parents stayed behind and asked really, really good questions.
So we had one of those presenters go to Sheehan already and speak to all the health courses.
Right.
And I'm exploring currently with the other secondary administrators, so at both middle schools and at the other high school, of bringing in another presenter.
This included a parent education piece, and
Gotcha.
to quote one of the parents, she thought she was on top of everything, but what she was actually moving around when she was cleaning her son's room was a pod, and she thought it was a piece of a Lego. And like, they did not understand, like, they passed things around and they're like, this is
Yeah.
what it is.
It's
And
scary.
yeah, it was very, there were a lot of parents there. It was really nice to see.
Ms. Levesque?
A couple of points on this particular topic. We're actually having a presenter at the Department of Developmental Services come and talk to us about folks with intellectual disabilities are 7 times more likely to have some type of sexual abuse. So that might be something, when you're looking at risky behaviors or something that can happen to our students, to keep in mind. And I'll
You
get
said
the
7 times?
we're getting presented on that, I think in January. We're having a presenter. If you want, I'll give you the information and you can come with.
Yes, please do.
The other thing is, going back to the development of support strategies and opportunities for students with special needs, I think it's imperative that we really start partnering with DSS and DDS about what programs are offered and advocacy for transitioning programs into day program services for our folks. And we're not capitalizing on how we can support them with technology intervention either. So I
Yeah.
think that needs
Well,
to take
one of the
place.
things that and I didn't want to be presumptuous and add to this section, is that, and I talked to Mr. Votto about this, and actually your ears must have been burning because your name came up, of course, is that I would like to propose some investigation in doing a 22 to 25-year-old program that's voluntary in the state of, it's voluntary in Wallingford, so that we would have to work with DDS because they can't meet the needs of 22 to 25-year-olds. It's not required, so we'd have to look at it. But we definitely have enough job placements in Wallingford to offer those opportunities for our students, because when they're aging out at 21 in particular, we're finding that, again, the services, they're not taking the baton and taking it further with the students. So looking
It's
at...
a matter of funding at the state level.
Exactly.
Because every year
So-
we advocate for
Exactly.
age-outs and graduates.
So knowing that that is not going to get any easier, but knowing that we have students who could benefit from 3 more years and I'm starting some conversations with other groups and organizations, can we offer a program that might require some payment on the part of the family or other services to pay, but at a lower cost, because we have the job sites. We have so many robust job sites that our students then could be gainfully employed, so that 3-year, 22 to 25, would be actually the idea that at 25, the business that they're working with does hire them. So we kind of take the place, in a way.
Of searching for competitive employment for the
Correct.
population.
So that's
And I would
where-
suggest that maybe you talk to the DDS commissioner.
That's, yeah, so I need your help. That, you were on my list of, we
I
talked
can-
about this last
I can
week,
make
Mike
that
and I, right,
happen.
Mike? And we said that Karen would have all the contacts for me to meet with, because that's something that we're seeing, there's a real gap, and I think Wallingford could actually take students from other districts at that point, and we potentially could have a consortium.
I think the department would be very interested in looking into that.
Yeah, so we're gonna need your help.
Okay, no problem.
Moving on to midterm, we're looking at implementing, and this would be going not for the fall, but we're looking at for future years out, most likely 2 years from now, 120 hours of internship/apprenticeship opportunity for high school students. We have some students doing internships, so that's why I have continuation, but it's going to be more structured. And that's where we need to have the conversation, which this is so perfect because it ties into, are we going to give that as a credit bearing or an opportunity to say that that's part of their 6.5 credits to be in our district, to have that meeting that minimum credit. Implement three semester high school pipeline. That is going to start over the summer. You've heard about that. That's going to be the internship opportunity, apprenticeship opportunity come the summer. It goes into the fall, and then the spring is actually focusing those students on their resume writing, their interview skills with potential employment or scholarship to go to a technical college or technical programming. Again, the career awareness for pathways K-5, that's really a focus, as you know. That's going to be an ongoing. We're working with the library media specialists on the videos of the local businesses. We're trying to implement that. Tony's part of this, as well as Rob Covey. Very important. Expand career fairs to all grade 3 to 5 students. Right now, Parker Farms has a phenomenal fair. This year, we're going to bus over all 5th graders from Rock Hill, from Pond Hill, and from Fritz to Parker Farms for the fair. Next year, we're looking to move the fair to Oakdale to have all 3-5 students experience it. So we don't have to have businesses do 4 different days, which is a lot to ask of local businesses. They give a lot of themselves, but if we do it at Oakdale, we could have a large event. We could even do breakout sessions and maybe even invite parents if we do it, so it's closer to the end of the day, so they can meet businesses and start learning about that. Align middle school career fairs to high school pathways. That's something that we're going to be working on, for next year. And also looking at the 3-5s, aligning it to the electives that we talked about earlier at the middle school. So the students start seeing those connections as they go to these career fairs, at the very least, cluster the careers together that match the clusters of our high school curriculum planning guide. Continue college tour programming by college and career specialists. This past summer, as you know, we had our college and career specialists do a tour of colleges the week after school got out, and we were shocked because we had to turn kids away because we said 1 bus, and it was packed. It was packed within the first day of being released as an opportunity, and they had to pay. It was a great experience, so we're looking to continue to grow that. And actually now, based on a meeting we had with Housatonic Gateway today, to really develop some relationships to get more students on those campuses more frequently. There's really a desire to work with Wallingford since we're centrally located. The payment, it goes from college stuff to now some practical stuff. Implement payment system for activities accounts. We have done a Reese in-service, and Karen and Dominic are part of that with some of our staff. And then investigate having yearly sign-off on district handbook related to district policies and practices for staff. We have a handbook, but we need to now kind of tie that in so we have those practices reviewed annually. All right, curriculum. You're on, my friend. And I will forward for you.
So one of our short-term goals is just a continuation of revising our curricular units to keep content aligned and current. So while some have been on a regular plan for review and updating, some, as you know from all the information I provided tonight, are a little bit older. I'm having trouble seeing with my new progressives, I'm sorry. I have to make sure I point my eyes in the right way. To update some of our courses that are still in course outline. Through that process, we are looking at the viability of the courses in general. Do they need to be sunsetted? Do we need more new and improved? All the while continuing to work with our staff so that they understand the content that's within and how it's aligned to standards. Second bullet point is to look at our units and revise them in a way that provides more co-teaching and collaborative opportunities. And this is K-12. So again, it's looking at opportunities to strengthen the math components of maybe some of our CTE classes. It is looking at cross-curricular opportunities at the elementary school, knowing that the school day is only so long and we have so much to cover. So the more efficient we can be, and the better aligned we can be, and the more connections that we make to a student's real world, real life, the better our students will do. Looking at revised career pathways, as you saw from the presentation last month, planning to start at the middle school, leading right through the high school, increasing space for STEM courses as well as opportunities, increasing technology and IT courses, which we're doing this year at Moran, and increased participation in medical careers. So as Dr. Mezzo mentioned earlier this evening, you'll see that in the strategic plan budget for the additional personnel for CNA that's needed to accommodate the interest that we have in that pathway. Oh, sorry, I looked at you and you moved it. You know, I think through part of our professional development, especially this year where many of our days are district days, we're looking at instructional practice, making sure that our students are at the center of everything that we do, and providing teachers the opportunity to have some autonomy in what they're doing within classes, and then getting appropriate feedback through walkthroughs and otherwise. Interactive teaching approaches, looking at capstone in general and how work internship programs can be used for credit towards capstone, and based on the conversation that we had this evening, through other graduation requirements as well. Each month as we meet with our management teams and the curriculum office, we are looking at ways to align mastery-based learning practices and curriculum development into our courses. So when we look at cross-curricular, when we look at internships, we want the opportunity to provide as much student choice into what students are doing, as well as aligning it back to our indicators and standards so that students can see the connections that they're making outside of the classroom. And the last bullet is looking at the academic leveling system. This has been an ongoing conversation in curriculum to not only look at how we're entering students into classes to ensure that there's flexibility and that students are placed appropriately, but looking at the levels themselves. Yes.
Does that include middle school also?
Well, right now, our middle school classes are not leveled, with the exception of accelerated with the math area. So looking at the criteria, Christy routinely meets with her math department to look at the criteria necessary for how we enter students into that level. To be honest, this was more geared toward high school, but you know, every time that we are, especially this time of year, looking at student placement and scheduling, that conversation does occur.
I've just, Mr. Votto mentioned being prepared for math in the high school. And I know how the kids are grouped at the middle school. And I think that when you have, for example, you may have a second grade reader and a 10th grade reader in the same class, and I think that makes the delivery of rigorous instruction for all levels a little bit more difficult. Especially at the middle school. For example, language arts meets 2 out of 3 days, right? So if a teacher is pulling small groups into small groups instruction for 20 minutes a day, then that means my child gets 40 minutes of language arts rigorous instruction based on her level or his level, 40 minutes every 2 days. And that doesn't seem like, if we're struggling or we're not preparing kids for high school, that instead of rethinking the curriculum, I'm wondering if we can rethink how we approach it.
I understand. So, you know, I do want to add that throughout the course of the middle school class period, the small group instruction is one part of that. So when you look at the 20 minutes of instruction, that's aligned really specifically to a child's individual needs, whether that's conferencing or small group. But then for the other remaining time, when it's whole group instruction, there still is that that need to differentiate your approach to the grade level standards within the curriculum. So I don't want that to be negated either. I understand where you're coming from, and looking at making sure that we are setting up every classroom for success in terms of how we're placing kids. But I do, feel the need to mention that outside of the small group instruction, there should be that interaction, that engagement, that differentiation with teaching the grade level standard as well, not just in the small group.
Can you go over that last bullet again?
Evaluate academic levels to determine appropriate student placement. So as we are, as we're scheduling and we're looking at making sure that students are placed appropriately, in some classes there are criteria, as you heard Mrs. Medancy and Mrs. O'Donnell discuss. And then others is using, high school administration uses SAT data to make sure that a student is recommended or has discussion for a particular level class that best meets their need. So if a student goes in with the mindset of taking a particular level class, but through teacher recommendation, through assessment data, it looks like maybe a more rigorous option might.
You're talking like general versus academic?
I could be, yes. Yep, that's one part of it, yes.
Not necessarily changing that, it's just making
No.
sure that students
Are
being
placed
recommended
appropriately.
for their appropriate
But you're not talking like homogeneous grouping.
No.
No, this is about making sure we have, and actually Mr. Daly has done an amazing job of reviewing this data at Lemon Hall. You get the AP potential, and basically it looks at what are students potentially capable of achieving and where they're able to be successful. Sometimes we find students who have the highest or have high levels of AP potential are not taking AP classes or not even taking honors classes. They're just going with the academic. So this is having counselors have that information and having a way to have those conversations with those students and those families saying, you're not challenging yourself enough,
We don't, but I know we have sometimes, a long time ago, we have replaced honors because of AP courses. Do we try to keep? I don't want to sacrifice honors courses for AP courses.
We have.
No, and I think there are many instances where there are both. So,
That's just something I think.
No,
Yeah,
and I gotta.
see what you're saying.
Well, I gotta tell you, it's difficult though, because again, it's the distribution of students. So, we're very fortunate, again, and again, unless you go outside the district or you have the opportunity to work in another district or have relatives in another district, we're very fortunate. We offer a very broad range of course levels, course opportunities that many districts can't do. We've held on to a lot. We really, really have. And I know there's a lot of things I could be criticized for, and I am, but we've held on to those. I have not, the team, the administrator's central office has not reduced those offerings. And I know everybody, when we first started this whole process and we were doing a lot of changes to the district, everybody was concerned, oh, that's what was going to happen. It never did.
Well, I just think
So-
that needs to be, keep that in mind.
Yeah, no. I'm just saying that that's more for, for everybody out there. And that's the same thing with class sizes. We have monitored our class sizes. That class sizes are not set by a configuration of a structure. It's set by the Board of Education, your guidelines that you give us, working so closely with our administrators. They perseverate over those class sections. It's much more difficult at the high school because you have so many moving parts and pieces. Middle school is you have this 6 teachers, you go across 6 teachers, you go across 5. But we've even at the middle school, when we had that bubble class, we added a 6th section of classes where needed. So we have never, we've never shied away from adding staff. If anything, we've always erred on the side of caution, and we end up with too low classes in some instances. And I guess somebody could say you never have too small of a class, but they're below our standards. So I think those are important pieces.
okay, thank you. So as some of our midterm ongoing discussions is looking at assessment and grading practices, currently, we're looking at student work to calibrate against our scoring criteria. It's bringing up good conversations about what does mastery look like within each content area. Refining and expanding capstone opportunities for all of our high school students, looking at capstone in general and how we can broaden it so that it's not so limiting as more and more students are participating in it. Redesigning summer school opportunities to increase participation and flexibility and alignment to student needs. It's in need of a review. And then expanding grant writing resources for the district. And then finally, why we continue to work on it, it's ongoing, which is why I placed it in the long-term category, is to develop more lifelong learning skills through internships, work study, apprenticeships, et cetera. Continue to create a 9-12 system more aligned to a college model. That kind of falls along with Rob Covey's presentation in regards to pathways and opportunities. And then investigating and implementing pathways to align to mastery-based learning and curriculum development. I think we're at a very exciting time where we've come very far in the last few years with looking at our different courses and the content and how they align to individual student need. And so as we continue to move forward, we're continuing to have great conversations about what that looks like and how it can continue to evolve as our students evolve.
Can I get an update on page 7? It indicates focus area, goal number 5, that I guess what's going on now, or maybe it's been postponed, that you're looking at to perform a gap analysis.
Yeah, I kept that on there because last year, you know, we had it on hold in the spring with the notion that the wellness coordinator and the director of special services would coordinate this year to kind of look at all of that. And that's been difficult to do right now because our director of special services is out on leave. So it is on hold. It is something that we need to have those two individuals collaborate on to look at overlap of services to ensure that we are meeting our students' needs and no one is falling through the cracks. So it is on hold.
What would you consider to be a state-of-the-art school counseling model?
Well, I think one of the things we have to look at is how we're providing our services right now, how we're meeting with families, how we're connecting back to students and families as it relates not just to day-to-day life within the school, but all of the work that we're doing in planning and design. It's important to have that communication flow freely between home and school, and making sure that parents, whether it's through Naviance, through meetings with our school counselors, understand the options that are available to their students and how it builds upon each year.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at, best practices in surrounding districts, it's looking at that work and ensuring that our counselors and our students and our families are all working collaboratively for the same end goal.
So when do we anticipate we might be looking at this? Maybe in the spring?
I don't know.
I highly
Too soon?
doubt it, yeah. I would say that that's gonna be a fall or summer opportunity.
Dr. Menzo, do you have a score update?
Okay.
I have 27 to 6.
Okay. Ms. Raccio, she had a question. Back on topic.
Sorry.
Along the same lines, on page 2, there's language about the intervention team continuing to meet and review protocols and resources to align to best teaching practices. Then it goes on to say materials were purchased for consistency of instruction K-5. What, was that like a phonics program? What was purchased?
What we purchased was a leveled literacy intervention through Fontes and Pinnell. It's a comprehensive intervention program that looks at both phonics and word work and comprehension and fluency. We are piloting it right now. Our K2 teachers are doing it. We're looking to expand through 3-5 within the budget. So
And that's all K2?
It is.
Oh, good. That's
It is.
exciting.
Mm-hmm.
One other one,
Sure.
word language. Are we really looking at that for the fall? For the budget, K-2?
It is in the strategic plan budget. It isn't necessarily in the strategic plan budget for 1920, but it has been something that has been desired, and, you know, through fiscal issues, kind of, it's still there. It
Okay.
just.
I got
will-
excited.
I know. We will continue to kind of review it and analyze where it falls within the priorities as the budget season progresses.
Okay. If we find money.
Yeah.
In this area also of curriculum instruction, there are a couple items that we're still discussing internally that will be presented through the budget process, that we have to be very, we have to be very thoughtful in our approach. So we're looking at a couple in terms of reading and instruction as well.
Mhm.
Right, district climate, Mr. Loomis.
So here we've got our short-term, midterm, and long-term goals. We're carrying over the same 5 goals from last year. Each building is currently addressing their climate, and that has been included in their improvement plans that were presented earlier this year for you. So it is being addressed, and we're meeting regularly with the district climate survey, or with the district climate committee, and each building is meeting individually with their climate committees. And what I'm doing at the district level is ensuring that they're addressing those survey results from the end of last year. That was the big concern with the board, was that we are moving to a biennial administration of all our surveys. But let's make sure at the beginning of the year we're aware of what those last results were, and we have some programs in place, and that is being done. We're going to continue to, with some of our programming that we currently have, for example, Second Step. We have a couple places that's really highlighting it and doing it extremely well. I think of Parker Farms that is really rolling this out. So we hope to see that continue to grow. And again, Second Step is helping teach the kids the tools for that problem solving when they're in difficult situations outside of the classroom. So in the hallway, at the playground, outside of school, providing them with those tools to be able to handle difficult issues. And we're also looking at exploring more programming and social emotional learning especially. We're going to reflect on those 5 goals. Again, that's kind of what I inherited as the Safe School Climate Coordinator, and we're going to make adjustments as needed. There is some carryover with those goals and, for example, the Safe School Climate Committee, which meets regularly, and Dave Bryant is the head of. So there's some carryover with that, and I would like to be on the same page with that. There's also carryover between climate and our Connecticut School Health Survey. So ensuring that we aren't asking the kids the exact same questions and beating a dead horse, and being as efficient as possible. And again, taking a look at those 5 goals and possibly making some adjustments going forward. And we're also preparing right now for the next administration of the school climate surveys. Again, we're doing this biennially, so the next administration would be January of 2020. At the district climate committee meeting, we talked about what time of year is best to provide these surveys. You may recall we only had about 16% of parents participate in our climate surveys last administration, and personally I want to triple that number, and I don't think that's ridiculous to triple that number, and having the time to plan for it is what's going to enable us to do that. And so long-term goal, we're going to try and grow a little more comfortable with this, okay, every 2 years. In the off year, certainly doing some sort of dipstick or measure to make sure we are on track.
Just a couple of other things under climate. What we've traditionally seen in the past is that we've put under the strategic plan in this area school resource officers. I think what we have to look at is the fact that when you look at the budget this year, that's not going to be in the budget because we have the relationship with the mayor where he's continually looking at with the police chief to increase time. As part of that, I just want to say that I do have the data from the school, the officers that are presently in our schools that I'm going to bring forward to you in January. We had said that we were going to do that. So I followed through on that. So we have the data. And then what we want to do is we want to share that data collection with the board and then potentially go to a town council meeting to share the valuable work that they're doing at our schools.
Didn't we get that?
No, this
We
is.
got like a memo of everything they do in our schools.
Oh, no, that was shared services. I had asked for that this year because the chief, every year, all departments have to put out, if they do shared services, they offer support. So now what I have is the actual data from their work from September or the end of August, from the first day of school to now. I have how many meetings they had with students, how many attendance activities. We had that agreement that I established because we had to have an agreement because we were allowing police to come into our schools. So part of it, and I sent this out to all of you, there was a data collection component that we were asking them to collect, and then we were going to bring back to you mid-year. So they've done that. I just got it today. They're right on time. And so we're going to process that. I want to share it with my building principals, who I know have been very appreciative of the support, and then bring that to the board so that you could take a look at that. The other part of school climate, we have to decide if it's going to go in school climate or facilities, is that we're looking at sally ports or man traps for front entrance vestibules. So what we're looking to do, and Karen Vayu is part of this, as well as Dominic, is putting to, when you walk through the front door, rather than the person will still sweat until they'll have to buzz in, they'll show their ID. Then they'll get into the first door. The next door will be locked. In that first door, there will be a system, we're investigating, have a system where they swipe their ID card, their license. Their badge will be reviewed. It goes through a quick review of reports, and then a badge will be printed at either the main office where they have to retrieve it or at the greeters. They will not be allowed in the building until that badge has been cleared. Most schools, or what they're doing is they're putting those badge things and the person's already in the building. So if a person is going to potentially do harm, we've already given them access to the building. So those doors, the second set of doors, will be unlocked once their badge has been printed officially. And the badge we're looking at is to expire, so it turns a color. If the building, so the next day the person can't just come back with the badge on. The badge would change a color. So we're investigating all this, but we're deciding if it goes in climate, because in the past we put some security items in climate, or does it go in facilities under safety and security? I think it's going to go to facilities. But we're just wanted to give you updates on those pieces. Again, I can't thank Karen and Dominic enough in this area with Mark. It's been incredible. And of course, the police department. They went out and they reviewed all schools for those systems.
And Dr. Menzel, when you go through that list, can you, just because it came to my mind that we're looking now at the renewal for the bus contract, because it's already been 3 years. Can you make sure they get credit for that? Because they're spending time on that.
Oh, the red flags. Yeah.
Red flags. They're spending
I thought
time on that
I'm like, we're not renewing
different
our-
bus renewal.
Yeah.
No, red flags.
Yep.
They spend time on that every single month,
Yeah.
reviewing all that.
Absolutely. So facilities, I won't go through all of these. I do want to share with the board that Mark did provide, as I put in my Friday update, the capital projects as well as non-capital projects that would impact the 4 schools that we're looking at, the 4 facilities. So he provided all of that information to the consultants. So that status quo number, the one that you originally had, option 1, that number will have changed because it will not just take into account the mayor's approved capital items, but then all other capital items. So you'll see things for food services, you'll see all those different areas, and that's been provided. That was provided last Wednesday to the consultants, giving them plenty of time to provide an adjusted number for all of you. Because again, that number, that status quo number, I think we all kind of scratched our head and said, wait a minute, there's no way these buildings could be, brought up to snuff with just that little amount of money. That was based on the mayor, which is appropriate, the mayor's classification he gave us of 20,000, 20 years life expectancy. This now incorporates all of those other ancillary items like the turf, which is not considered a capital item by the mayor, but would be a capital item in this project. So you could sense that number would be going up significantly.
Are some of those things, most of them, not reimbursed?
Well, none of them are
None of them
reimbursed from the
are,
state
right.
of Connecticut. The status
I think
quo,
that's a very good point.
the status quo is the town from $1. So if you go into renovate to new, all 4 buildings, now you get the 53% reimbursement from the state.
That's a very good point.
So there's or 2 building, whatever buildings you choose to do. I just was thrown out because I know people, the status quo was based on 4. That's why I just matched that up. So those numbers will be provided and should be shared with you. And that'll be shared on Monday night as we move forward. So again, short term, we're really, you could see that Mark is really, and which is appropriately so, working with Dominic, really looking at efficiencies. And so you'll see a lot of the efficiencies piece in here. And we did that my first year here. We did an efficiency study, and we did all of the lighting. We did all of our systems. We worked with Next Gen Corporation out of Middletown. And so now it's our time to kind of revisit this. So you're going to see that. We're going to explore the funding, secure funding, and design team for improvements for energy efficiency. We'll work with the Wallingford Electric because they do, while they're not part of CLMP, they do get clean energy funds that we can then apply as we did with the last grant and last opportunities, the last 2 that we did with Wallingford Electric. And then we do have on here, as we continue to move forward, air conditioning the schools. I know that is not always something that's popular because it's costly, but the reality is that if we start using our schools as frequently as we do or continue to, that's something we need to look at.
Dr. Menzo, real quick, is there a way to calculate the cost? If we're paying teachers for a full day, but they get a half-day release, is there a way to calculate how much that release time is costing us? And then compare it to the cost of air conditioning a building?
If we have to close school early?
Yes.
If we have to close school early?
So
yeah.
we can say, well, releasing teachers is costing us, and students, we're paying this amount.
Well,
What's
no,
that?
teachers leave on those days too. So you're getting, yeah, so
4
it's
days,
approximately 2
X amount of
hours.
teachers.
So it's approximately 8 hours, so it's a full day. So if we take at least a full day, a little
What
over
our
a full
payroll
day.
is on a full
What is
day.
a payroll on a full day in comparison
versus the
to?
cost of,
Yeah.
that's a good point.
Yeah, we could pull that. Yeah, 'cause it's about a full day. All right. So then moving to food services, you're going to see a lot of kitchen work. And that's the key thing, is that we need to look at the convection ovens, the steamers, the warmers, just a variety of different areas. I know that midterm moving, and this would be part of the renovation if we were to do any type of renovation to any of the schools, no matter what configuration or restructuring we decide on as a community, they would have to look at the high schools and start looking at the middle schools in the future for restructuring. The cafeterias are just very antiquated in their structure. So looking at the dining experience, making more opportunities there. And the same thing long-term would be with the middle schools. Because that, again, in getting student and parent input on how to remodel those spaces. They serve their purpose now, but they could be more appealing dining experiences, so to speak, because they're serving their purpose. And last but not least, technology.
So in the short term, we're going to continue implementing the one-to-one technology at the high schools and also the universal access for middle school. As you know, this was our first year for doing both. Overall, it went very smooth, and really that's due to my staff. They did a phenomenal job working a lot of things out that were new to us. So I really have to thank the techs from the shop, including Evan, Tom, Carl, and Bob. We may be making a few tweaks. We're going to monitor how much work it is bringing them all back, updating them over the summer, and then we'll have at least double to hand out next year or possibly more. So we're going to monitor that, and I may be coming back to you next year about collecting them over the summer. We've also continued to refresh as a midterm goal technology at all levels, including our infrastructure, which is sort of behind the scenes, you don't see, but it requires significant investment to keep everything just working the way it's working. And in the last 4 years, thankfully, due to the E-rate funding we've been utilizing, we've made significant increases in our wireless, wired and wireless networks in the schools. 5 years ago, we were getting complaints from schools of when they're doing testing and getting out to the internet, and we had 30 meg lines in many of our elementary schools, and I have more Wi-Fi at home than that. So we really have made significant strides in that, and we're going to continue to do that. This year, actually, what we're planning right now for next summer is the last year of what's called the Category 2 funding that they've had available. We're not really sure what the schools and libraries or USAC is going to do with that, whether it's going to be we're hoping that there's a lot of leftover money. We had more money than we could use because it was a 50% match. We had to pay the other 50%. So I would have loved to spend all $500,000, but we did. We were able to leverage that and make some significant strides in our infrastructure replacement plan. Of course, continue to provide ongoing PD for all levels, both staff, teaching staff and non-teaching staff. And then long-term, explore emerging technologies which would enhance the educational experience. Of course, technology is always changing. I'm lucky to attend some up-and-coming conferences and see technology that either we can switch to a different platform utilizing our existing budget dollars, or there might be something new for classroom technology. We are always exploring and looking into getting the biggest bang for our buck, if you will. Also, the funding for the computer replacement plan in order to keep current technologies for staff and students, which is really important. If you're working on a 7-year-old laptop, your whole experience is not going to be as good as it could be. And in order to keep our technologies current, we've been able to utilize that 1% funding, E-rate grants to keep our technology. As you see, I present every year. We have been in the 5-year replacement plan cycle, which has worked out great. Laptops last a little bit less, and desktops and other equipment lasts a little bit more, but that's really been our goal. And then also continue to explore ways to maximize our current investments. We're always looking at what we currently own and how we can tweak it. For example, PowerSchool, how can we track other information to make the experience for teachers easier, or administrators can get their hands on data that could help students and teachers. So that's just one example, but we always look at maximizing our current investments in hardware and software.
Ms. Levesque?
With regard to the created list and database of assistive technology tools, and I would say, and where to obtain them, that might be a good thing to share with parents that have their children connected with the PPS department. And a great resource for that are many of the occupational therapists that I know have a lot of information about assistive technology as it applies to students with special needs. So that would be some folks to tap into.
I'm glad you actually brought that up, because I also wanted to tie in this year, as you know, July 1, the new data privacy laws came into effect. So because of that, we really were forced to create a database of all our software, what kind of information it is collecting about our children, and get data privacy agreements in place whenever possible. So that, I think I have almost 80 agreements already in place, some of them being special ed software. Some are still in process, and some agreements aren't required if there's no personally identifiable information shared. So we are continuing to expand that list, and I'm working very closely with PPS on different software packages and apps that they need to use with students.
Because there are quite a few out there. I know my son uses quite a few. And they're very, very helpful in navigating even outside visitations to different places in the community. So that's, but yes, you're absolutely right, because we're collecting data on, especially if you're looking at how many times for percentages, you know, 4 out of 5 times this student will do this. And we definitely need to have those agreements in place so that we can collect the data.
And we want to make sure that they're not collecting, or the ones that are collecting data, what are they doing with it? So that's
So
what these
true.
agreements are protecting us and our students' information about.
Was there a waiver for some of the programs that were in IEPs? So if a student was using a program pre-July 1, we had to potentially take them off the program? Like, I remember
There's a
seeing it,
very
but I don't remember the
limited,
answer.
it is in the law that there is a waiver. It's very limited in scope. I've had lots of talks with our attorneys. They don't even quite have a process to use that. At most schools, most of my colleagues have said, we've tried to use another package, because what you end up having to prove is there wasn't anything else that was compliant available. So it becomes very difficult to even use that waiver language.
It just seems
Yeah. Luckily, the
crazy. I mean, like Bookshare is
yeah.
something that's free from the Department of Ed if you're an identified student, and then there's no agreement. So it's like some of the things just seem ridiculous. I know, you're living it too.
I could spend about 8 hours every week on this and still not be done, really.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Karen has taken the strictest interpretation, because we're so afraid that if we don't, we open the district to liability. So the challenge is that, you know, we're constantly, and she's like, oh, you know, another one in it, and I'm signing like 3 a week. I mean, it was, you know, it was crazy. But it's a matter of one word, and actually I had an initial word today because there was a change in one word. So we're doing more than our due diligence as a district. I think a lot of districts are just all grappling with this, but there are some counterintuitive things that have occurred.
So what we're hoping, this is a very new law, as you know. It was supposed to be in place a few years ago, got delayed, and then finally tweaked a little bit, and then implemented. There's a little bit disagreement on what represents a contract. Some attorneys will tell you, you know, when you do that they call it click wrap, when you agree, you know how when it comes up all those words and you scroll to the bottom and just click yes really quick without reading? Some attorneys will say, well, that's an agreement. That would be okay.
You have to read those?
Yeah. Well, I've read
Sorry.
way too many terms of service that I never wanted to read before. But the problem comes in is, you know how you get those updates and they say, hey, we've changed our terms of service. Well, if you read it all and agreed to the last version, now they've changed it. How could we possibly keep track of that? So because of that, we've taken and we're not unique. Many schools have said, no, we're having a written agreement with the vendor. But on the flip side, if you're the vendor, you now have 169 agreements with different towns in Connecticut alone. And maybe Wallingford said, I need to be notified in the case of a breach in 5 days. And Meriden said, I need 10 days. And someone else said 6 days. And it becomes a really impossible thing. Many times, we don't have much leverage if it's a free app we're using. They have to send it to their attorneys to review, and they don't have a staff of attorneys. I've had cases where Pearson textbooks, I've been back and forth with the attorneys 4 times. We got a signed agreement. Pearson online assessments, completely different company, so start over. Those are just some examples. But what we're hoping is that the law gets tweaked again, and we do have a website that the state is paying for right now, where we can say we're using this software, and the software can say they're going to be compliant with all the rules and regs, without signing an agreement. We're hoping that that's gonna be enough and that we won't have to have a separate agreement, as long as they pledge to follow all the Connecticut rules, so.
And Connecticut has one of the most stringent set of laws, because we get this with any partnership we're trying to look at. You know, people, and we're asking in our partnerships, we're asking in many of our tech partnerships to give it to us for free, and they're like, well, yeah, but then we have to spend all this money on attorney fees, because they can do business elsewhere a lot easier.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Public comment? Seeing no public, this meeting is adjourned.